Just press that one. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this full council meeting. I have the protocol to read out in a second. I'd just firstly like to pay comment to the late Chris Brimblecombe, who passed away, Cliff Brimblecombe, who passed away. His widow went before him, so my condolences to his family. He was chairman of this authority and a councillor of many years standing, so it's sad to note his passing, so thank you. I'd like to welcome Charles, who's been, who I'm standing in for. He's getting better. As you see him in the front, he's looking much better after a short spell of illness, but he's getting back to full health, and he's already told me he intends to chair the next council meeting in a fortnight. So well done for getting better, and nice to see you here. And yeah, move on. Right. So there's no fire alarm test is planned, and should the fire alarm sound, please leave the room and stand by the far end of the car park. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak, and a boom microphone will be brought over to you. If you don't speak into the microphone, you'll not be heard on the live stream otherwise. Please remain seated. Please keep points short and ask members not to repeat points that they've already been raised, and voting will be by a show of hands. And should the meeting be adjourned, any filming must cease unless by the express permission from those being filmed has been obtained. During any adjournment, I would ask that members and public and officers please leave the room until the meeting reconvenes. Thank you very much indeed. So we move to item 1, which is apologies for absence. Sarah.
Have councillors Foden, Gribble, Haynes, Hayes, Jenks, Peart, Cook, Evans, Swain, Nutley and Eden.
Chairman, Sarah, Parker Khan and Avril Kurzweil as well.
Alistair.
Yeah, just to say, Councillor Cook is in Torway Hospital with COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes.
Our best wishes to her, obviously, go from all the members, I'm sure. Right, and we move to item 2, declarations of interest, if any. Members, any declarations of interest? Councillor Richard Dawes.
Hi there, I've got a declaration of interest that I'm a director of the not-for-profit Community Benefit Society, the Alexandra Theatre, Newton Abbot. I asked for dispensation to partake in the debate and vote on this matter because my understanding of LGA rules is that not-for-profit directorships are not pecuniary interests. I've been given dispensation to speak to the motion, but not to partake in the debate and vote. I therefore ask if other councillors with similar interests in not-for-profits operating in Newton Abbot are being offered the same dispensation. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for that. Councillor Phil Bullivant.
Can I move that the councillor be allowed to take part and vote in this meeting, please?
Right, there's a show of hands for that. You want to speak?
Sorry, can I confirm it's not for the council to determine, it's for the monitoring officer to determine whether there is an interest in that. We've had a view that there isn't or the interest is there. Monitoring officer has given a view, which is the ability for the councillor to speak prior to the debate, but not take part in the debate and vote.
Point of order, Chair.
Carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, first I should congratulate you on having looked at your conscience and left the Condemn Alliance and become an independent member. But the point I wanted to make is that surely officers advise the council. The council is the sovereign body here. We make decisions, and this is not a point of law, something that we cannot do. As Councillor Laws has pointed out, he would be acting in accord with local government sort of guidance on this. So I suggest that we do take the vote as put forward, as we're entitled to.
The Constitution is a document that sets out that there is an interest here, and the Constitution, if you want to go against the Constitution, I think, you know, if you really say that you don't want to follow our Constitution, then that's a matter for members. I would suggest that that is an inappropriate thing to be doing, given the interest that members have. In terms of the second question asked by Councillor Dawes, we only advise members who have given their expression of interest and told us what that is, and then asked for a dispensation. It's for members to decide.
Chair, I would like to suggest that the argument that it would be against the Constitution is a little rich when this council has, over the last sort of 3.5 years, many times gone against the Constitution. Indeed, the current monitoring officer has acted against the Constitution. I think it is within the Constitution that our council is sovereign and we can decide to vote on this.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I think the big problem we've got here is that we're suggesting that this is a constitutional matter. It's actually a matter of law. The government have laid out in the Localism Act 2011 the grounds for pecuniary interests and provided a very detailed description and definition of what is and what is not a pecuniary interest within the terms of the Localism Act. The current council model goes beyond the legal minimum requirement. And that is a bit of a worry if the government are setting out what the actual terms of pecuniary interest are, and we are going beyond that to restrict debate and potentially leave members of the community outside the debate. That's a worry. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just clarify that the councillor is correct in terms of the Localism Act, in terms of what was there as a pecuniary interest. The council, as part of the LGA did go beyond the Act and thought it was appropriate for directors of not-for-profit companies who have registrable interests in that sense not to be party, and the model code adopted by the council in principle and the LGA's advice was that directors who have a directorship, even though it's not for profit of those companies, shouldn't take part in the debate, so they have ability to talk, to give a view prior to the debate, but not to debate and not to vote, where they have a direct interest in the outcome of that decision. So clearly, if if this was a decision that we were making that has a direct impact on the directorship of a organisation or a body or the benefit of that, that's where the OGA was giving advice. So it was giving advice on the basis that councillors weren't actually acting in the interests of their directorship, which is their primary responsibility. So as a director, you have a responsibility first to the company, secondly to the council and to taxpayers.
Right. Councillor Connor.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose, apart from Councillor Dawes, no member will be familiar with the conversations that Councillor Dawes will have had with the monitoring officer, all of the details and all of the implications. What I've heard the Managing Director describe is the considerations in the Code of Conduct, that it's wider than simply a financial interest, which, as Councillor Dawes rightly says, is non-pecuniary in that sense, but is an interest in terms of a council asset, for example. I don't think that it should be put to a vote, but if it is going to be put to a vote, I will vote against, simply because I can't be familiar with all of the details that Councillor Dawes will have had in conversation with the monitoring officer. I'm not in a position to be able to judge on that. I have heard the Managing Director give advice, and I will accept that advice in the absence of anything else, Chairman. And I think then, the vote either needs to be put or Councillor Bullivan, withdraws it, whichever it is. I don't mind, but I will vote against, Chairman.
Councillor Liam Malone.
The leader has pointed out that he agrees it's not a pecuniary interest, but by the terms of which he has said Councillor Dawes does have an interest, apply entirely to Councillors Wrigley and Hook being members of the Newton Abbot CIC. So if you are going to misread your own constitution in order to disinclude Councillor Dawes, can we please at least not be hypocrites and also disinclude these two councillors? At least play by a straight bat here, please.
There was another councillor here. Councillor Mike Hocking.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a bit of clarity, really. I thought this this meeting today was going to be debating the possibility of us borrowing 600,000 extra for the cinema. That's nothing to do with the Alexander Theatre, and I cannot see how Councillor Dawes, being part of the Alexander Theatre, whatever it is he belongs to there, I cannot see how that interferes or even comes in question of the cinema. So I don't really know what we're debating and what we're arguing about. As far as I can see, the cinema is a completely separate issue to the Alexander Theatre.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mike Hocking. Well, sorry, I was about to speak, but Councillor Martin Wrigley.
After you, Chair.
After me. Well, all I was going to say was, in view of the debate that we've had so far, how does Councillor Richard Dawes feel about this? I mean, I don't think he's being over disadvantaged here with the fact that he's going to speak on it. He's not being asked to leave the room. at the end of the day. He's going to sit there and listen to the debate. So how do you feel, Richard? Do you feel you're being disadvantaged? And would you like to vote, or where are we?
Yeah, thanks very much for the question, Chair. So I feel I'd agree with Councillor Hocking. It pertains to the cinema funding. The reason I declared an interest is that the cinema has an impact on a potential not-for-profit organisation that I may be involved in the future, should it get off the ground. What I would be very aggrieved is if other councillors with similar interests in already operating not-for-profits, the Newton Abbot CIC already operates facilities within the town, already operates, rents rooms out, would be in direct competition in being a facility within the town with the business that is about to be debated to be funded. So I would hark back to Councillor Malone's idea of play it with a straight bat. Either I am allowed to vote, or Councillors Wrigley and Hook, who are directors of the Newton Abbot CIC, step back and don't vote as well. Thank you.
So what you're saying is you'd very much like to take part in the debate rather than just speaking and vote at the same time. Yes. So can I just confer with the managing director for a second to see what he makes of that? For councillors to make the decision. Yeah. Well, I'm told it's for councillors Hook and Wrigley to decide whether they've got an interest to declare.
How is that fair?
Well, we've got to. Are you withdrawing your Councillor Wrigley?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I am a director of the Newton Abbot CIC. Yes, the Newton Abbot CIC operates the Buckland Centre and the Courtney Centre within the town. I don't believe those are impacted in any way whatsoever with any of the business under discussion today. I don't see there being any connection whatsoever with it. I would happily take advice from the monitoring officer. I have written to the monitoring officer about this. I've yet to receive a reply. But I don't believe there is any interest to declare in the business today that pertains to the Newton Abbot CIC. I don't think it has anything to do with today's business.
Okay, so that's cleared that up from those. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, similarly, I did look at this. I would never want to be in the situation where I hadn't declared an interest. So I have declared my interest as a director of Newton Abbot CIC on the web for all to see. Beyond that, it says, from what I've read, where a matter arises at a meeting which directly relates to one of your disclosable pecuniary interests, then I obviously need to declare it and take the action required. I do not feel, as Councillor Wrigley has said, that this matter directly relates to this interest as a director. It has no, the Newton Abbot CIC has no, it has general objectives within the town of Newton Abbot, and nothing that is directly related to the decision that we're about to make today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to come back to Councillor Phil Bullivant's proposal. It still stands. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Councillor Linda Pethery.
Thank you, Chair. The monitoring officer has spoken to me about Councillor Hook and Councillor Wrigley, and I think if he was here, he would probably say that the same applies to Councillor Hook and Councillor Wrigley as it does to Councillor Dawes, and I think in fairness, it probably would be fair that they all were allowed to speak but not vote.
May we have your proposition again, Councillor? But
I'm unaware of that conversation, Councillor Petherick. You know, the interest we have, isn't it, which we're talking about, is Councillor Dawes expressed an interest and asked for a view on it. It's for members to determine whether they feel they need to come forward and whether they have a clear conscience in the sense of their role. Pecuniary interests are interesting because pecuniary interests are there, and if you take part in a debate that then has a positive impact on that business or that operation, is then a criminal offence. Slightly different for registrable interests. So this is a registrable interest. My view and my conversations with the monitoring officer was that I haven't discussed at length, to be perfectly frank, anything to do with Councillor Hook or Councillor Wrigley. In terms of Councillor Dawes is the director of the Community Benefits Society, which has put a planning application into the council and has applied for funding to set up a building, to set up an organisation that will provide cultural activities within the town centre. I'm afraid I disagree with Councillor Hocking, because obviously whether the cinema goes ahead or doesn't go ahead has a significant impact on the future of cultural activities in the Alexandra. That was the sense of where we are. I will give my own personal view, which is we're not talking about direct impacts upon the community interest company in terms of the Courtney Centre or that. This is a far greater impact in terms of how the future of the Alexandra operates compared to what might happen to the Courtney Centre or the Mary Rose Centre.
Thank you. Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard from a member of this council that the monitoring officer has the view that all three members ought to be treated the same. It's a great shame that the monitoring officer isn't here to sort of shed further light on this. I wonder if you or anyone else is able to confirm, is his non-attendance at all related to the thorny issues thrown up by these three councillors' participation?
Chairman, this is distasteful. Mr. Woodhead has actually had to have an operation last week. He's unable to attend. To suggest that it's because he's afraid to duck a question, I think is inappropriate and really quite rude.
Thank you, Mr. Shears. You're attempting to smear me in some way there. I deliberately phrased my question in a way that avoided any possibility that there might be personal reasons for attending this, as to whether it might be related to this issue. You have introduced the personal situation of an employee into public debate here. I did not, you did. Do not attempt to smear me for your disgusting behaviour in this matter.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I think there is actually a slight crossover here, and I think from the point of view of the Managing Director's comments regarding the cultural aspect of what's happening in the creation of a cultural quarter. I attended recently a Liberal Democrat meeting at the Courtney Centre, and on the ground level of that building was a cultural event. It was a piano recital. So if there's going to be a cultural quarter or a cultural effort made with the Alexandra Theatre in future, that has a direct impact potentially on the Courtney Centre. So if there is going to be there a conflict of interest, it's very clear that any creation of a new venue for that kind of event is going to impact on other locations within the town. And therefore, anybody who's a member of the CIC is potentially arguing or debating from a position where they're going to know what's going on and the other element that is looking to create is not going to. So I think we should really just go for a level of consistency. That's all we're asking for here. A level of consistency that says where there is an interest, whether it's pecuniary or otherwise, we take a consistent approach. People can debate it, but I think they don't vote on it. Thank you.
Councillor Liam Malone.
At every meeting I've been at to discuss the new plans for the Alexandra and to meet with all the people that, usually at the Courtney Centre, either Councillor Hook or Wrigley or both of them have been there swaying the argument, trying to move things in their direction, putting their point across, as directors of the CIC. It's pretty rich for them to come along now and try and put a paper wall in between this and what they represent and saying, we're not an interested party.
Councillor Connett would like a word.
Chairman, if I'm able to, I'd like to... Chairman, if I'm able to, I'd like to propose that the question is put.
Well, before, I've got something to say, if I may, before that. I'd like to try and take the heat of this out. Surely it's up to the member to decide, and that's Councillor Richard Dawes. If he wants to vote and speak on it, it's up to him whether he wants to do so or not. And he, as I see it, in my years of experience of being a councillor, he runs the gauntlet. If he's out of order, to be brought before the powers that be because he's out of order. So we've heard from him. We know what interest he's got and everything. So I would like just to let the meeting carry on. If he wants to, he's going to stay anyway, and he's going to be here anyway. If he wants to put up his hand and speak and what have you, if he does anything out of order, it's up for the monitoring people to just out the so-called punishments that befall people when they step out of order. So, that's as I see it. Now, you want to go to the vote on this. Councillor Phil Bullivant, would you like to repeat what your motion was?
I believe it's important that we've got 47 councillors who have... It's important to remember we've got 47 councillors who will have a view on this. The facility in Newton Abbot, there are approximately 16 councillors who potentially are users of this facility anyway. So the difficulty is, how do you define, I will go to that cinema, I've gone to the previous cinema. Am I therefore guilty of passing a vote because I've got an interest in that cinema? I just think for democracy, one vote in 47, with a voice that has got qualifications to be heard, should be allowed to take part in the discussion and debate and vote. That is democracy. Now, I do appreciate the limitations, and I do agree that the responsibility rests with the individual. For that reason, my motion, which is to allow Councillor Dawes to speak and vote, remains. Thank you.
And you seconded that, did you not, Councillor McGregor? Councillor, I want to go to the vote on this, Councillor Patch, but you persistent in this. We've heard a lot from you. Let's hear finally from you, very briefly, please.
I do appreciate that, Chair, and I'm attempting to find a solution here which might be acceptable to a broad number of members. And that is, I would like to propose an amendment that all three members, with the prima facie facts before us, be treated in the same way in this meeting. Would anybody second that?
Right, Councillor Malone seconded. We've got to take the amendment first. And go, yes.
Chairman, it's not a matter for the council. I think actually you summarised it. Councillor Dawes has taken advice from the monitoring officer. It's advice. Councillor Dawes can choose to follow it or not. If he doesn't, you've set out the peril that any councillor anywhere might face the risk of. And without interruption, Chairman, the amendment speaks to other people. It's not for the council to decide who does or doesn't have an interest. Councillor Hook and Councillor Wrigley have expressed their understanding. Councillor Wrigley says he's written to the monitoring officer and awaits a reply. And you rightly pointed out, just to recap, that it's a matter for Councillor Dawes whether he takes the advice, and that there may be a peril if he chooses not to. These matters are not for the council to vote on, and I was asking for the vote to be put because we might be here until 4 o'clock discussing the Constitution.
Sorry, I can confirm that, Chairman. It is not for the council to decide who and hasn't got interest in terms of having a vote to decide whether they feel that Councillor Wrigley or Hook have got an interest. It's for Councillor Hook and Wrigley to determine whether they come forward with that. They've made a decision. You shouldn't be bringing that into this conversation because it is irrelevant for it.
Well, if we go down this long protracted road of having amendments and so, we're going to be here an awful amount of time. We've heard that now that Councillor Richard Dawes, as far as I can see it, would like to take part in the debate as well and vote on it, haven't we? So he runs the Roth the same as any other councillor, on that. I don't think there's any necessary to have any votes whatsoever on anything. I have to say it's fairly clear, and whether we're going to be here for a long period of time, and that is my solution. I think you'll find he's going to speak. Are you going to stay? You've made it perfectly clear, Councillor Richard Dawes. Can I finally hear from you? You're going to stay. You're going to be a part of the meeting and debate it and vote on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. The reason I didn't partake in the previous debate is that I was told by the monitoring officer that I'd be undertaking a criminal offence by doing so. I think the managing director has just said it's different today, so I'm slightly confused by the advice that I've been given. But I don't believe that I have an interest that constitutes a criminal offence.
So, members, can I have a straw poll? Put your hands up, please, if you're happy for the meeting to move on.
Next business. On the basis of the assurance from Councillor Dawes, I withdraw the question.
Thank you. That has helped me out a lot, and you've withdrawn as well. And so I think we know what's going to happen. May I move on, please, members? Thank you very much for the compromise and the way you've handled it. As you know, I like to try and give everybody their say, but we're not going to be here too much longer because we got that out, very contentious thing, if you like, out the way. So thank you very much. We've got an amicable solution here. So let's move on to item 4, which is item 3. What? There's no more declarations of interest, so we're moving to 3. We're moving to 3. All right? Yeah, I said 4. I meant 3. Right. So it's the chairman of the Audit Scrutiny Committee, Sally Morgan, to introduce this item, which is pages 23 to 22 on your agenda. Thank you. Sally.
Thank you. I'll be very quick because we discussed this on the 3rd of November and we propose that we accept the resolution of the Devon Audit Partnership with one change to their recommendation, and that was to increase the priority of the creation of a stakeholder management plan. And that was it. And I propose that we just note this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. That report, if you like, came before. I'll just remind members that at that Sally chaired the meeting. Councillor Mary Colclough was there. Councillor Hugh Cox was there. And Councillor Linda Goodman-Bradbury was there. This report was unanimous. I did abstain because I could see myself being in the chair and I didn't want to be accused of having any bias in that. So it was unanimous, apart from my abstention, that we went that way from that meeting, because this came before the Audit Committee. Now, are you happy for me to... you'll have to excuse me, I forgot to mute my phone.
Probably the Secretary of State.
Yeah. No, it wasn't the budget. I was awfully sorry about that.
Giving you a call, isn't it?
So, members, are you happy to note this report and we move on, please? Can I have just a show of hands as it's only a noting of a report? Is anybody against not noting the report? Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sally. And my apologies about the phone going off. Right, we move now to item 4, which is the Future High Street Fund project. And we've got the Entertainment Services Solution Limited in attendance with Rob Arthur, and he's going to address the members on this item, which is the Future High Street Fund cinema report. So where's Rob? At the back? Right, with a microphone to you, sir, and we'll carry on.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I thought it'd be useful to split down the report, and I didn't want to do a formal presentation. The documentation, there's a lot of documentation around this. It's all available for the members and councillors, but I thought it useful to talk about the market overview, Newton Abbot in particular, the viability, and have some question and answers afterwards. Happy to answer any question that's raised on here. My background is primarily cinema. For over 30 years I've worked in the UK and internationally, laterally with the European Bank for Reconstruction Development in places as far afield as Kazakhstan, opened up cinemas in Taiwan, Romania, been working in the Middle East lately. Primarily where cinemas are being built, I'm asked to advise and consult there. In the UK, I pretty much spent time from Inverness to Plymouth with Warner Brothers. I spent a lot of time in London. And my journey started off yesterday in Edinburgh, down through to Newton Abbot. And I was also managing director of Apollo, who looked after the cinema in Paynton. So I was very familiar with the area at that time, about 10 years ago until it was sold to View. So in terms of market overview, I'm sure you've all been reading in the press about the challenges of Hollywood, the challenges of Silicon Valley, and that has an impact on any cinema viability in Newton Abbot. Last weekend, there was a major film release. Black Panther, it's always talked about in dollars and pounds, and so it was a significant blockbuster release. The last big one, Black Adam, and the one before that, Top Gun, they're really top performing films that go into cinema, but there's not been enough of those over the last 2 years. Since the pandemic started in March 2020, the market in the UK first year declined by 76% and then grew back. So it didn't matter where in the world you were, and the UK's fared better than others. Cinemas were closed or shuttered up. And that's had an impact on market sentiment from developers, investors, landlords who I work with on what happens next. And I've been doing multiple local authority reports. Is that in some instances we're saying this isn't suitable, and in others we're saying it's very suitable. So I'll come on to Newton Abbot afterwards. But in terms of the market, that part about Hollywood, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, and so is having a big impact and will continue to do so over the next 2 to 3 years. Plays into, just in context, the big 3 cinema operators in the UK, which is around 70% of screens, have more debt on their balance sheets than the entire global box office. And that is having an impact, and that was all pre-pandemic levels. Whereas smaller family-run independent cinemas, we've heard about WTW Scott, there's others in the market, they have sustained because they're long-term players in the market. They don't borrow, they don't raise large levels of debt, and they've been more sustainable. And in terms of, say, just going back to streaming, you may also have heard that, I guess, Amazon, Netflix, and Apple, so they're actually entering the cinema market, and this is broad context. They see the value of releasing films into cinema is a premium aspect. Once it's on the library within a streamer, it's invisible. It's there for 2 or 3 weeks, it's invisible. Top Gun was first released in the 80s. It still resonates now. It's got a brand value, and it was back this year. It'll be the #1 film in the world this year, and it's maintained its brand presence, and it enables customers of all ages, all populaces to go out to cinema. So just in terms of Newton Abbot, I think this is a very viable location for a cinema. The proposed location is dead centre in a marketplace. It's got good access, good visibility. There's a nice design around it. One of the pieces we were challenged with, and this is pre-pandemic, is that the average cinema build was going to be 10 to 12 screens. This is 4 with 650 seats, so it's a modest build. The other part is when we looked through the occupancy level of the Alexandra for cinema screenings, and that included some live events and others, it was generating over 30% occupancy. Now, when you compare that to a hotel, that may sound low. Hotels usually work at 80 to 90% occupancy, but it's selling 1 bed per night. This is selling 4 shows per day on a 7-day period. So it's obvious that most cinemas in the UK track it at 15 to 17% occupancy. During the pandemic, it was down to 5% in lots of locations. So the numbers generated in Alexandra suggest that there is a really keen and active cinema-going populace. When I visited the site, 2 challenges that relate into local community. There are mobility issues with for 20% of the community in Newton Abbot, and there's no ability to go upstairs for a number of people given the staircases and access routes there, so they're pretty much focused on one screen in the lower level. There's also limited levels of screenings of live events and operas. Speaking to cinema management, they can't play everything they would like to, so there's a need to broaden out content and offers. And I would take this from a kids club in the morning to a live opera, ballet, National Theatre, so midweek, to an Andre Rieu session on a Saturday or Sunday, and special family days. So the other piece, and I've not been able to quantify this in full, but I think it'd be worth suggesting that this is a business that we would project to generate over £1 million of revenue in a year, and that's an uplift from around 250, 300,000 pounds of revenue. It will enable more jobs, I would say a tripling of jobs in the locality, but it also retains leisure spend within Newton Abbot. Having done studies elsewhere, it can be up to 10% additional footfall and 12% additional food and beverage spend in the area, so as a knock-on effect to other areas. I also think that it ties into the Teignbridge 10, and we put that into the report. Some of them are loosely termed. I think that others are more closely termed, and I'd put this in a 6 to 9 p.m. economy opportunity, kids' holidays, school holidays, and other areas that will benefit from the ability to have a cinema screening, not having people leave the town, and that was again one of the factors, leaving town to go away to be provided for with a facility, so whether it be Paignton, Plymouth, Exeter, so they should be able to stay in town more often and spend more money locally. Could increase the ability for creative services elsewhere, but I mean, a cinema is a cinema. It's up to the operator to work out what they wish to do. So in terms of viability, yes, we do see it's viable at the operational level. The challenge at the moment is the costs in the market. There has been significant cost inflation for fixtures and fittings. So as an example, there is about 30–40% increase in the cost of a digital projector, and there's a semiconductor shortage globally. That's actually having an impact coming in. I spoke to Scott Cinemas. They were actually waiting on their shipping of seats to go to Bridgewater, and they were delayed in transit, but also delayed because of manufacturing. It's all having a knock-on effect. Cost of living crisis also has challenges that will customers be able to afford to go to cinema as often as they previously did? So we factored that into economic models. I think the biggest part is that, and this comes back to viability of Newton Abbot, it's not straddled with the impacts of previous. It's being built to a size and scale potentially that's required now. So 4 screens, 600 seats, not 15 screens and 3,000 seats as happens in big cities. There's a growing population here. There's a need to encourage and engage young people here. So when we took all those factors into account, and others, we do see that there's a viable opportunity. As far as operator goes, it's a real challenge for the current operator because of timing. I've checked through their balance sheets and reports. They are actually I'd say one of the most sustainable operators I've seen in market. But their challenge is not to take too many risks, not to put their entire company in jeopardy. And the biggest key was just timing of this. So they're really keen on Newton Abbot, but it's just timing to deliver because they don't want to jeopardize everything else they do. And they're a very good company I've known for a number of years to work with. Let's say that, and I think come back to viability, if it wasn't to be WTW Scott Cinemas, the question from me, and we've raised this in the report, are there any other suitable operators out there who would like to be in Newton Abbot? And the answer to that one is yes, there is. It would most likely not be the big 3 operators, and I couldn't recommend them because they will most likely change hands or be in a volatile situation, but there are other like-minded operators in the market who have been robust through the pandemic who would covet being in Newton Abbot. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the report as needs.
Thank you very much. Gordon Ho.
Do I need to stand?
No, you sit down.
You need a microphone.
Do I need a microphone?
Yes?
Yes.
you do. Yes. We're coming.
They won't hear you on live streaming if you don't.
Oh, well, I can shout even louder if you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very brief question to the Speaker, and thanking him for his address. He mentioned robust other contenders, I think was the phrase. Can he clarify that statement, evidence who they might be, likelihood of participation? Thank you.
Like to answer that?
Yep. So when I'm asked to do feasibility studies, if in most instances there aren't operators attached to a specific site or a development, so I get asked to do the feasibility studies, and by default I speak regularly to all of the operators. They provide me with information on what they are intending to do, locations that they would like to be involved in or not. So examples that I see in market right now, I believe that there's the group called It's the Arc Cinemas is one, who are heavily active in the UK market and growing. They haven't visited the scheme or the site yet, but I would recommend that an approach be made. There's also Real Cinemas, who are based in Loughborough. They're very active in market, very strong balance sheet, limited to zero debt or borrowings on the balance sheet, and are very active and keen to be working in localised, community-driven towns. So those are two. There are another two options that I haven't we've placed into the reports, but I think that those two would be definitely most active and interested. Others would likely to be more costly and offer a different type of cinema offer. So possibilities, but that would need, I think it would need to come back to officers and councillors here to check.
It's Councillor McGregor next.
Thank you, Chair. A question again for the person presenting the report. You've just mentioned Loughborough, and one of the key elements, I think, for success in a situation like the one we're discussing would be transport links, which, as we know, within Devon have sometimes left a lot to be desired. With Loughborough, has got a great catchment area because it's got a huge student population looking for entertainment. It's not a hugely well-served town in terms of other facilities, but it does have a very large student population, something which Newton Abbot lacks. When I'm looking at transport links, I'm thinking about particularly areas around Newton Abbot. And if you look at Teignmouth and Dawlish, people have a very good bus service that comes from Torquay through the town and up to Exeter, and they also have the train service, which is very central. Another key element of the issue that I see there is a lot of new cinemas require parking. So if you're going to increase the capacity of a cinema situation, then where are these people going to park? I mean, I know that we have a multi-storey car park, but we've just reduced parking in the town centre by allocating it for a hotel. So from the perspective of what I'm looking at, in terms of transport links and looking at parking availability for a new screen in the centre of town, I do find that is potentially a problem. Now, coming back to the streaming element, is really important. My kids all stream. They don't really go to the cinema. My middle son will go to cinema if he wants to fill himself up on popcorn and fizzy drinks, but that is it. They will mostly wait until it is available on streaming, or they'll pick it up, unfortunately, on streaming which has been delivered early out with the rules. So, from these perspectives, a lot of children do that, and we are going to see more difficulty in attracting more people to a cinema location with more screens if we don't have the feed of the population coming into the town. And that is a concern for me in terms of allocating cash for this.
Right, Councillor Hocking next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. So on the same sort of lines as Councillor McGregor, actually. I'm just wondering if the gentleman from ESS has actually been into Newton Abbot and actually looked where this proposed cinema is going to be put, or has he just seen it by pictures and that sent to him by this council? It seems very strange that when you read through his report, there are certain references to Newton Abbot as a university, wants to increase it as a university town. Where? It also says that to access the campus, etc. Where? I am very concerned that this council may well have spent a fair bit of money on a report that actually they might have got a better result if they bought a couple of Janet and John books. I do not see Newton Abbot in this report. I am sorry. The gentleman also quoted the fact that he had looked at the figures, the people using the Alexander. But he also put into those figures. I don't know if this mic's working. Is it? He also put into those figures the 3 weeks that the Alexander is used as a theatre. Now, those 3 weeks, and I can vouch for that, those 3 weeks are always full. That bottom where the Alexander is being used as a theatre is full. Always has full houses every day. And yet, he's actually brought those into the cinema figures. It would have been nice if he'd broke those up and let us know what the cinema figures were for Newton Abbot. And I think you'll find that that will be a lot different than what he's trying to suggest now. Scots have already admitted that they cannot make the Alexander pay. I really do fail to see how they're going to make this brand new 4-screen, 650-seat cinema pay. They might have got money now in their bank accounts, but they're not willing to use it all, are they, on a venture? They want us to put all money up front. I think we're being robbed, we're being pulled down the line by a company that actually, I don't think, will ever make this new cinema work. It's a hideous thing being put inside a small square, which is going to make a big difference to Newton Abbot. It's going to ruin it. Thank you.
Councillor Petherick.
Thank you, Chair. I think the points... Is working, is it? Yeah. I think that the points that I wanted to raise have more or less been covered. I would like to go back to the parking, because we've heard from the Speaker lots of advantages of having this cinema here, and it's 600 seats, and when there's a blockbuster movie on, it's going to be packed all day, lots of showings. But if you look at 600 people attending a blockbuster event here, then that could be 100 or maybe 200 cars, and that is the concern as to where they're going to park. I don't think we have the capacity in Newton Abbot for the parking, particularly when you get close to Christmas time, when you've got a job to park anyway without this cinema. Thank you.
It's Councillor Malone, and then I've got Councillor Dewhurst, Councillor Bullivant.
Hi, thank you. It was my adopted amendment that brought you here, Mr. Arthur, and so I'd like to thank you first of all for coming all the way from Edinburgh. It's far more effort than Scott Cinemas have made. Apparently, they have been asked to present to us and have decided not to do so. Why on earth we're forking out $5.5 million to build them a cinema when they can't even be bothered to come and present their ideas to us is beyond me, but that's a mystery I'll probably never get to the bottom of. Councillor Hocking has questioned ESS and your understanding of this town. I'm afraid I must continue in the same vein. Just on the subject of ESS and your suitability to assess us and tell us, advise us on this decision. These are some facts in the public domain, so if they're wrong, I do apologise, and I would ask you to correct them. ESS has been in existence for less than 1 year and 8 months. You've been registered at your current address for 1 year and 3 months. You've got 4 directors, one in Scotland, one in England, one in Malta, one in Turkey. Despite your short term of incorporation, you've changed the details of your directorship and residence 9 times. You're currently registered at Mercury House, 19 to 21 Chapel Street, Marlow, Buckinghamshire. This office is a conversion of a 5-bedroom residential home and with a chartered accountants on the bottom. There's 5 rooms and a bathroom above the accountants. There are 86 companies registered to the 5 rooms at this address. 49 are active. The rest are waiting to be struck off. You're the director of 4 companies, none of which have office premises. The address of 2 of them is your home address. One is in Beaconsfield, the other's this one. You've run 5 previous companies, all now dissolved through bankruptcy. Your last filed tax return shows that your company's current assets total just £2,687. I'm sure you're glad of this council's business. Of the other 2 companies registered to this home, one, Digital Cinema Solutions, has an operating balance of £100. The other, Paguro Ideas, has declared assets of £7,510, but owes more than £23,000 to its creditors. The 4th company, the Leisure Property Forum Limited, is registered to the private home in Beaconsfield, has no less than 15 directors and 2 secretaries, and added £6,000 to its profits last year. There's quite a bit of crossover and shared family names and addresses among these directorships. Now, you see what I'm getting at. There's just a few red flags here. There's a company with no track record, operating with the till float of an ice cream van, with a correspondence address that's an unattended letterbox in Buckinghamshire, running a company from your home, and you have 5 bankrupt companies to your name, and it appears that you're under the cosh of creditors. I'm concerned because you're advising us on how to spend £5.5 million of public money when you seem to have a problem staying in the red. I mean, have you even had any clients before this council? It just seems bananas to me that we're accepting what you're saying as if it's... I mean, I'm very impressed by your previous experience, and it sounds like you know what you're talking about, but that kind of brings me to my second point. I asked for consultation from a disinterested party. A disinterested party. Now, your other company, the Leisure Property Forum Limited, describes itself on LinkedIn as a property-based forum which offers seminars and networking opportunities for anyone involved in the leisure industry. Our members include owners, operators, developers, landlords, agents and advisors, I presume, of cinemas and related businesses. Now, nobody is going to tell a council that's got £5.5 million of public money to spend that their own industry is not worth investing in. You know, the colleagues, customers and business partners of you, Mr. Arthur, are owners and operators of cinemas and other entertainment businesses. Now, ESS is an interested party.
Is there a question, please?
Yeah, the question is, what the hell do you think you're doing? I asked in good faith for proper advice from a disinterested party that understands the nighttime economy. Not one that's involved in the nighttime economy, not one that requires the nighttime economy to be invested in for the sake of its own members in another connected company. This is just wrong. This is just wrong. And you've asked a company that doesn't even have a website. It doesn't even have a telephone number. They don't even have a public shop front. I don't know where you found them. This is... You're just pulling people out the ether and saying, these people say we should spend this money because that's the result you wanted. And it's just not fair. It's not fair on the people, especially right now, when everyone's suffering, when everyone's facing a Christmas of apologies to their kids instead of goodwill and joy. You want to spend another £600,000 on this carbuncle, on this thing that's going to be the sarcophagus of this administration, frankly, and you found these people to rubber stamp it for you. I'm just disgusted. And my question is, how do you sleep?
Right, thank you. We heard from you there at fairly length.
Is the gentleman here going to be allowed to respond? I think he was.
Would you like to respond, sir?
Yes, I would. I think a lot of the characterisation there is wrong.
We can tell Google because that's where it all came from.
Yeah, that's fine. We are a relatively new and small company. We have an accountant, absolutely there. Have not been bankrupt at the times or so that, in fact, haven't in the times that have been raised there. I would be happy to put forward the information. Would be happy to put forward the information directly on that basis. We have a number of clients now run those through, and I've worked in a number of situations prior to this current business, which we established on a low-cost basis during the pandemic. So I have clients in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Aldar is the master developer in Abu Dhabi. That's one. Advanced Northumberland would be very happy for you to speak to them. We've just recently completed work for them on the same basis. I've worked pretty much recently, it's all in the public domain, Paisley Community, Paisley Renfrewshire Council, where we had to reject the proposition for a cinema because it wasn't viable in that area. So we are very objective in our outlook in a number of different areas. The Leisure Property Forum actually accounts, there are local authorities who are also members of the Leisure Property Forum. It's a non-for-profit grouping of people who work in the leisure property industry. And that includes Landsec, Hammerson, British Land, investment companies or so. And I was asked earlier how I can connect or ask people who would perhaps be interested in this area, in this space. And that's the forum I applied to join, and I'm a main committee member. And if the questions are raised and put into writing, I'm happy to reply to all of them in detail. I don't think it's, the right forum to do so. But my experience in cinema is credible. And yes, I've opened, closed, restructured, reopened, or so, a number of outlets with challenges. Could I come back to some of the previous points raised?
Yes, you can.
Okay. In terms of, say, the university, and so we were looking at positive elements in places there, and that's entirely my fault because I was driving in Newton Abbot, and yes, I've spent time walking around here. I think it's a really attractive town in comparison to places that I otherwise get to visit. Actually, one of the most attractive towns that I've been to. I saw signage for Exeter University and immediately picked up on that and checked out the university website and saw film and media studies there. So my apologies, and we will correct that in the report. In terms of, say, car parking, and so yeah, there's usually between the average of 2 to 3 people who visit the town, whether a family or a couple visiting. So there will be pressures on car parking, public transport or so. But it's in the centre of town and makes it more accessible than other areas. I guess it's like from a town centre first perspective, that's ideal. But I guess needs to be taken into account. I'm not sure if there's other points. I guess a part about 4 screens. Part that I was challenged with in looking through in viability is that yes, it's 4 screens, it's double the capacity now, but it's more accessible in terms of, say, disability. Disabled people or others, the 20% of people in Newton Abbot who may not be best able to go into a cinema. But it was the ability to generate a 30-year lease income that I think was most interesting. Most retailers will offer 5, maximum 10 years. So for a cinema to deliver a 25 to 30 year lease period was really interesting. I hope that's answered other questions.
Is that, I've got 4 more councillors. I'll just read out their names. It's Councillor Dewhurst first, Councillor Pullivan, Councillor Russell, Councillor Hocking. And you can go down Councillor Patch as well on the end of that lot. Councillor Dawes, right at the end. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say this nearly 100-page report, to me, it is comprehensive. I wouldn't necessarily expect it to be absolutely 100% correct in every single item on 100 pages. But for me, if it looks like a duck, it's got feathers and swims in the water, then I think it's reasonable to call it a duck. And I think this is a good report. As far as the other councillor who's trying to talk over me is concerned, I'd just like to say, in terms of where this company, ESS, their registered office is, I run a touring caravan park, and our registered office is actually in an office block.
I'm giving you a caravan park, £5.5 million,
Yeah. So we are not.
These people expect and get the right to be listened to uninterrupted.
Yeah, you're quite right, Councillor
Robertson.
Robertson. Please.
Speak over other speakers. That is not democratic.
Yes.
Go on about being democratic, and they're the least democratic people in this place.
Yeah,
Can you stop it?
please let the speakers speak. I allowed Councillor Malone to quite a lengthy time to report on stuff when people were looking at me and saying, should this really be happening? I allowed him that courtesy, and he aired his views. It's the right of every democratic person here to have their views listened to uninterrupted. Please do that. All right. Yeah. Carry on, Councillor Dewhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we seem to be in a world where those who wish to shout loudest seem to get heard, sadly. So as far as I can see it, in terms of why we are here because this council is being asked to agree a further 600,000. And this report is there as a foundation of that to show where the future of cinema is going. And as far as I can see, it reads well. It does show that we have a future here in Newton Abbot. I personally think that is actually a striking design, a modern design, and I don't see it as a carbuncle or anything like that. I think this report shows where it's going. As far as the parking and transport is concerned, actually there are lots of improvements on highways around the town. There is good parking. You can almost always find tons of space in the multi-storey, which is, well, sort of 60 metres from the entrance to this proposed cinema. And as far as public transport is concerned, there are some fine bus services. I think of the Hot 12, which allows people from the south of the town to come up. It's an incredibly regular service, goes right through into the late night. And everything that this report talks about in terms of having a cinema as a base for a nighttime economy is going to happen. We're seeing lovely pictures of the new market, food halls and the like. I'm not going to comment on Scott Cinemas because sadly they're not here today, but we have heard that there are other operators, and I'm sure those other operators would provide the kind of cinema experience that those of us who love cinema will enjoy and want to use. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. The next councillor was Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you. Specific questions to the report writer. Do you believe we have approximately 1,000 car parking spaces available within 3 minutes walk of the proposed cinema? Do you believe 1,000 car parking spaces that are free after 6 o'clock in the evening are adequate to meet the needs of potential visitors to the cinema? And secondly, in your report, the additional £600,000, I understand, is repaid over the 30-year life of the project, and therefore it's effectively a loan as opposed to a grant. Could you please clarify that? Thank you.
Martin Flinkroft, will you answer that for us on behalf of the council?
Yeah, thank you. what we have seen with our car parking income since COVID is the numbers have gone back up generally for car parking income since the pandemic, but mainly around resorts. So our car parking within our main town centres, the numbers are still down and seem to be staying down. So as far as I'm aware, the occupancy availability in terms of those car parks is there to help with this, particularly in the evening when there are far few people car parking spaces taken up. It's probably worth me sort of running through all the financial numbers that are contained within the papers that you've got while I'm on the subject. So the cinema itself is going to cost about £8 million ballpark. We're getting a grant of £6 million, so it's going to cost £2 million to borrow for the cinema. The return is greater than the minimum return after the borrowing has been repaid. If you look at the wider Future High Street Fund scheme itself, that's about 13 million, and you get £9 million in grant. And overall, including this extra £600,000 that we're talking about, the borrowing is around about £3.8 million for the whole scheme. Outside of that, there will be an uplift estimated of our property in and around the development of around 3.3 million. There's the wider economic benefits of around £42 million to the local economy. And the financial figures that we've modelled ignore the greater rents that we'll get for the properties around the area, fewer voids, and the £600,000 that you're asking for approval for today gets added to our borrowing, so we increase our borrowing to 3.8 million, but it's repaid over the rental period, so it's not something for free, it does get repaid. It creates 41 additional jobs, and as we talked about at the start, car parking income will go up as a result of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's Councillor Russell now.
Thank you, Chairman. You will know, being local, that this debate is not unfamiliar to us on the Teignmouth side of the estuary. We have a very good, now, at the pavilions, we have a very good facility for cinema. But the Riviera, the auditorium at the Riviera, is still there and is available. We use it, Rotary use it for charity evening, for the African Queen and after Casablanca and all the old Humphrey Bogart films. So it's still in use like that, but of course it doesn't meet any of the disability requirements or access requirements that are provided within a new facility like the pavilions and like this one in Newton Abbot will be. So if you want nostalgia, yes, we go to the Riviera, but if you want modern facilities and modern screenings, then the pavilions is the place. And the two go together quite well. I think possibly the Alexander Theatre may not survive the way, you know, the things are progressing, but I know how loved it is for the theatre groups and the pantomimes. I've been to pantomimes there, and it's a wonderful, comfortable theatre, and I can see the arguments from both sides. I don't know whether the consultants have actually been familiar with what happened at the Riviera Cinema, because it's Scott's Cinemas the same, and they obviously know very much about the business. They seem very capable and knowledgeable about cinema provision in our local area. But we do have nostalgia for the Riviera. We go there for charity evenings. But the main features, of course, we go to the pavilions to get the big screenings. And I think that you can have this in Newton Abbot. Whether the Alexander Theatre survives, I hope it will, because it does give nostalgia evenings a good go. And really, that's all I have to say. Don't be afraid of this development, because the two go hand in hand. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Now, Councillor Hawking.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come back. After all I've heard being said here this morning, I believe that the report from ESS should be disregarded, as I do not believe it has been looked at with Newton Abbot in its mind. I believe it is partly from another report with Newton Abbot being fitted in here and there where the report needs Newton Abbot to be fitted in. I think that we should disregard this part of the meeting, and we should continue now with what we actually come here to do, and that is to discuss the £600,000 extra. We're now being told that our borrowing is now going to go up to nearly £4 million with this 600,000 being added. Don't you think that at a time that we're in, at this very moment, that to borrow £4 million is a bit of hindsight wrong? We're waiting for the government to give their budget today. How much of that budget is going to affect this council, we do not know. It may well be that we might have to suddenly find we've got £2 million plus hole now. There's pensions going up. There's other things going up. Wages themselves are continuing to rise. And we do not know what this government is going to do to the monies that it passes down to to councils like ourselves. We are not in a position, I do not believe, that to turn around as willy-nilly and say, here's £600,000 more to a company that we really do not know whether they're going to say, yes, we're going to run this theatre or not. We've heard from the consultants themselves that says they're not convinced. If you read between the lines, they're not convinced that Scots are going to run this cinema. But they say, oh, don't worry about it. There's other people out there that will. Is there? Will they? We've got so many unanswered questions here to suddenly turn around, knock half the market walk down to build, and it is a carbuncle. It is a huge building which overshadows a grade 1 listed building, i.e. the Market Hall and Alexander. It overshadows all that. It cannot be, if this was anywhere else, or conservation officer would have been jumping up and down saying, what do you think you're trying to do here? But no, this is part of Teignbridge's own property. So therefore, the conservation officer is actually, as far as I know, kept quite quiet. This is not the right place for a 4-screen cinema in the centre of Newton Abbot. I am not sure where you get the figures from saying it will increase the economy by £42 million. Not sure where that comes from. It'll be interesting if it could be explained how that working out is coming. The car parking argument, if Queen Street goes through the way that Queen Street has been planned, and hopefully it done, but if it does, all the cars that park in Queen Street now on both sides of the road will have to park somewhere. Therefore, you will not have the spare capacity within your car parks. And I'm not sure if I read it right, but you're saying that if these cars then go and park in the car park, the money back, the revenue back from the car parks will go up. Does that mean you're thinking about charging car parks after 6 o'clock? And by the way, we cannot use the multi-storey car park because that shuts at 6. Most of the people who go to cinemas go in the evening, which is the idea behind all this, that you want to increase the evening economy. I am sorry, this is not going to work in Newton Abbot. It is the wrong place, wrong size, and we do not want it. Yes, we want a new cinema, not there, not that size. Thank you.
Martin Flitcroft would like to respond to Councillor Mike Hocking's comments. Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of the borrowing, the returns we get are after the borrowing. So these are positive returns after repaying the capital and interest on any borrowing. The modelling has been looked at continuously and reflects the latest position in terms of interest rates and where we think they're going to go over the longer period. And we do take expert advice on that. The 600,000 isn't given to the operator. it's part of our overall construction costs and is paid over when the works have been done by the contractor to the contractor. That's the way that the deal will be done. And in terms of our budget gap, I don't know what the Charter is going to say today, but we will look at that in the budget round. But these give positive returns to that budget gap that we're talking about. I can't tell you where the £42 million figure comes from, apart from it's around the wider economic development benefits that you get in terms of visitors using other facilities in and around the town, I imagine, but that's a question for someone else. Thank you.
Right, I've got Councillor Patch, Councillor Dawes, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Connett so far. So we'll go to Councillor Patch next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by making a sincere apology for having interrupted a member, or two members today. Born of frustration, but it's totally right, it's unacceptable. And so particularly I apologise to Councillor Dewhurst for interrupting his discourse on waterfowl. I've got two very simple questions, one for the report author and one for the council. Perhaps they might want to take a note and ensure that they know what question I'm answering, what question I'm asking rather, and so that they can address this correctly. Firstly, for the report author, did you visit Newton Abbot prior to writing the report? Or your experiences of driving around Newton Abbot, are they from after the report was written and submitted, for instance, in visiting the council now? Secondly, for the council, how did you find the consultancy outfit for writing this report that's put before us now? I'm just intrigued from hearing from another member that they don't have a website and anything putting out their credentials in this area. So I'd just like to understand how they were found, in particular with respect to procurement procedures of the council. For instance, were any other bodies considered? 42 million. Yeah, I find it strange that no explanation can be offered as to where this was found. Perhaps someone is a Douglas Adams fan, as the answer to life, the universe, and everything was found to be 42.
Right, I think we'll take those two questions quickly. If you can give it to Rob Arthur at the back to answer one, that would be handy.
So the answer to the question, visited before or after, it was before. We were in a relatively tight time frame from last council meeting to now, so I travelled to the area, stayed in the area for a period of time, went to Paignton, Paignton, Torquay, Newton Abbot, met with council officers and walked around the town to be given guidance, and then we looked at the master plan areas. In terms of the other question, in terms of website, yes, we do have a website, and happy to refer that back to you afterwards.
Thank you. If Neil Blaney, perhaps, or Tom Phillips could answer the other question posed by Councillor Patch.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. On the first piece, it's a very niche consultancy market. We took advice from our own advisors, Montague Evans, who identified two outfits that could provide this advice to answer the exam question set. Rob Arthur at ESS, as we know today, who was appointed, and there's another outfit called the Big Picture Company, and they were both invited to put forward a proposal on how best to address the question, including track record, and it went through a selection process.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dawes was next.
There is a question, sorry, the third piece on the 42 million is a Green Book exercise. That's quite a prescriptive government-based assessment of the economic impact from a development, and that's been undertaken by a freelancer, Dominic Chapman, who has put forward all the, and it's an appendix to the reports as well, his approach to how that is assessed and the breakdown of all the constituent parts.
Thank you very much. So next...
Appendix 4, I'm told, of the final report.
Next to speak was Councillor Dawes.
Thank you. Chair, I just seek clarification where we're at in the agenda because I've got a fair few things to say. I do have some questions that are specific to the report. So can I just ask if we will be invited to speak to the motion for the funding to be supported by the council later in the agenda?
As far as I can tell, we're still on item 4, which is where the recommendation is to note the report. It comes up, the actual things move on after we've gone through this one, as I see it. But members may see it differently. So.
No, that's fine. I'll keep it brief and try and keep it to the report then. So I'd note the 100-page report is very detailed. Unlike other members, I think it is important that it's correct. It did contain a great deal of information in there. Quite tellingly, and I'd invite the writer of the report to verify this, as I read the report, it had Scott Cinema's 5-year business plan demonstrating that after 5 years that their operation was not viable. And the report writers themselves suggested that the Scots weren't trying hard enough and they should do, as had been suggested in the presentation, should do a few more things, should put on opera, should engage with the community more. Which running a person who runs a community benefit society who has operated cinemas, I'm sort of very aware that it's very easy for consultants to suggest that, and much harder to pull out in practice. In normal times, it's going to be much more difficult to do this in the worst recession in living memory. So Scott's plan themselves said it was not viable, though they also seem to increase their customer base, quadruple it, but that's quadruple it, as Mike Hocking suggested, also including those sell-out 3 weeks that the cinema benefits from by running as a theatre, which is the building's other use. So I'd agree with the report's sentiment that it is a good place for a cinema. It's just the scale of the cinema's wrong, and the ambition is unrealistic. So the business plan that does demonstrate viability shows 150,000 customers per year for the cinema, which equates to 417 customers per day, which on current metrics would be the Alex being sold out twice a day, which is quite something. Population of Newton Abbot 25,000, so that's every member from 0 to 100 years old of society coming 5 or 6 times a year. I understand that the demographic might stretch beyond here, so people will be able to choose not to go to the new 7 cinema in Torquay and travel to Newton Abbot. I just think it's wholly unrealistic. I agree. I was going to answer where the £42 million comes from. Because it's a standard multiplier. That if you bring nighttime economy into towns, you will benefit them. So hence, running the existing cinema as a theatre will have a benefit. Running a cinema will have a benefit, and that number gets larger the more customers you get. So hence consultants who put themselves forward for these jobs will try to seduce councils by just increasing the customer base. So the customer base, I believe, is unrealistic. So the particular sort of questions are for the writers of the report am I correct in reading that the Scott Cinema's 5-year plan that is contained within the report demonstrates loss-making business after 5 years, and how sort of realistic is it to expect every member of Newton Abbot to come to cinema 6 times a year, particularly given we're trading at 70% of 2019 cinema occupancy levels, and the likelihood of streaming affecting that ongoing is just huge. In fact, it's not even huge. It's a certainty. So I'll leave any of my other comments to the later debate. But those questions remain. That it's wholly unrealistic to suggest that amount of customer base for a new 4-screen cinema.
Well, I think in view of what you said, Councillor Dawes, I think we ought to have officer comment on that. If one of the officers could respond to that at the back, I think that would be really useful.
Am I okay to respond?
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of just coming back to the theatre revenue, and this is the 3 weeks of theatre, the only numbers that were placed into the Scott Cinemas accounts as a private hire charge, not the revenue from the theatre. So that we saw accounts for the theatre, which we didn't place in as a separate company, separate event. But in terms of, say, per capita levels, I do think there's challenges in several parts of the UK market. But I placed it when we looked at the actual numbers for Newton Abbot, and that's the county population as well as town population, it wasn't unreasonable. I'll give an example. Carmarthen in southwest Wales tracks its 16,000 population. It's an inland town, gravitational to that area. When I opened it up as an operator, I'm saying this from operator experience, 300,000 admits per year. So it's disproportionate levels of per capita. We actually based this on town population that I was aware of when I looked at it in reference points. But if you take, say, towns like Port Talbot, Barrow, Rhyl, Ashington, Northumberland is 15,000 population now. It's going through a similar process to this. It has 16,000 people in town, and it has a lot of competition in the area, far more than here. So that we see it's always a challenge, but we actually believe that the Newton Abbot population demographic is better proportionally than the others. I think that's actually covered in actually the financials. Yes, the answer to the question is that when I read through the expected outcomes from Scott Cinemas, they were projecting an £11,000 per annum profit. When I looked at the marketing line in terms of, say, engagement, because post-pandemic and getting people back to cinema engagement, there was very little marketing spend in the area. So I projected that they would have to spend more there, which pushed the balance into a loss. And that was running on about 14 to 15% occupancy. I adjusted on the option 2 in the report, I adjusted the occupancy by 1%, which increased the admissions by 10,000 admissions per annum, which is nominal, but adjusted some of the key cost lines, and that's sum up, which was energy, and sum down film cost and popcorn drinks costs to more realistic levels, and that made a dramatic difference. So it essentially moved the payback period from 114 years, which is unrealistic based on a 30-year lease, to 6.5 years based on a 30-year lease on option 2. Hope that explains the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. You were the obvious answer to report back, weren't you, on those questions? Thank you very much. Now we move to Councillor McGregor now.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bullivant might be surprised to hear this, but he made a very good point at the last meeting about the other elements of the building that were, unallocated in terms of what they were likely to be. But following on from that excellent point that Councillor Bullivant made about the rest of the building, other than the cinema element, is the fact that, having spoken to 1 or 2 Newton Abbot residents, one of the key elements that's come back in all of the discussions is that beyond the actual cinema, there's very little to attract younger people into Newton Abbot. In real terms, whilst the cinema may or may not be a viable option longer term, we don't know. The economy is currently in free fall. Food inflation's up 16.2% in October. People are already struggling. So we're already talking about, within 2 or 3 years, as things start to improve, that we're already way further back than we were when this Future High Street Fund was allocated in the first instance. So we are talking about long-term viability. It may well be an option that we look at how that rest of the building is used in terms of attracting income into the town. Not just from the perspective of bringing in people to spend money in other nighttime economy locations like restaurants and bars and things, but actually physically within that building, so that it can be actually properly viable, not just relying on the cinema operator. And I think that was a key point that Councillor Bullivant made the last time, is that we need to have a clear idea of the viability of the whole building, not just the cinema element to it. In terms of the projection for the £42 million, again, as one of my fellow members pointed out, we don't know actually what's going to be announced today in the budget. We don't know how that's going to impact on local authorities, their ability to borrow in future, their ability to pay for services currently. So again, it's one of those very delicate balances of, we actually have to decide today about whether or not this is a good scheme for the council to invest in. And I think that is the key element to it. It's not about, whether we want a cinema company in Newton Abbot or not, or whether we want to change things or not. It's about the viability of the scheme, and that is the real long-term concern that I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Debate moving along nicely as I see it, because we're only looking to note this report. We'll get into the nitty-gritty in the next item, but we've got two more speakers on it as far as I can see, unless anybody else. We've got Councillor Taylor, then we've got Councillor Connett, and we've got Councillor Malone again. All right, I'll take Councillor Taylor next, if I may. We've been waiting a long time.
Stand up again, please. Thank you.
Do you want to come in at the end, Alan? Next.
Thank you very much, Chair. I welcome this ESS report. I think it's a very comprehensive document which goes to an impressive level of detail on current cinema and events offers in the local area, from Exeter in the north to Totnes, Torquay and Paignton in the south. I hadn't really thought about a cinema being used to put on events, or to relay events, if you like. No matter what happens to the Alexandra Theatre, we're probably never going to see the Royal Ballet, for instance, come to Newton Abbot to put on a live performance there. But we will be able to go to a new cinema right next door and to watch it on screen there in some very welcoming surroundings. I think there's nobody here who would say that our current cinema offering in Newton Abbot is of the sort of standard that we would really like and expect for our town. And I'm very pleased to see the new plans for the cinema to come forward, in showing a level of ambition for the town that I don't think we've had before. Not only that, the government funding that would go with an approval for the scheme at some point in the future will really make a big difference to this town centre. And I don't take the view that others may take, that Newton Abbot doesn't need funding to the extent that we've got in front of us here. I think the business plan is good. I'm pleased to see that while the building will be washing its face over the next 30 years, when we come to that end point, of course, it'll be far more profitable. If you like, it's like buying a buy-to-let property. And I know there are members here, looking at the register of interests, who do have buy-to-let properties in the area. And if you're buying a buy-to-let property, but you're also taking out a loan where you're repaying your principal and your interest, then you're actually saving up money for the future by paying off all of your capital. And that's the sort of business proposition that we've got here. And I'm also very interested to hear about what our financial officer had to say about the side benefits that would come from it. The additional parking benefits, although I do hope that a lot of people are going to be using the public transport. We've got a bus hub right next door. We've got very regular services from the station via the bus, although it's not too far away to walk either. We've got a large town which people can walk down to the cinema rather than to go out of town, as we've often seen with these multiplexes elsewhere. So I'm very pleased to see all of this offer. I'm pleased to see the various reports that we've had on the governance side, but also to take this higher level view about what is happening with cinema, where the audiences are going to come from, what it's going to help deliver for the town. And at the end of the day, the cinema is in the right place. Currently, the plans for the cinema, the site is in the right place for the cinema. I've thought about whether there might be a better site elsewhere, but none can better this site in terms of what we're looking at now, which is a rather rundown. Despite its recent facelifts, I think nobody would argue that redevelopment within the Market Walk wouldn't be welcome, especially the sort of redevelopment that would allow a Grade 2 listed building like the Alexandra Theatre and the Market Hall to be seen in its proper perspective for the first time in 50 or 60 years. So I'd be very much happy to note this report and to move on to further discussions. But I would also like to thank ESS for opening our eyes to what can be, and I hope what will be, in our town centre. Thank you, Chair.
Martin, do you want to come back on?
Can I come in first, Martin? Just to pick up on Councillor Hocking's point, the Conservation Officer has taken a rigorous approach to the application. It's untrue that they've not concerned themselves with the application. The Heritage and Conservation Officer has worked very hard on the application with the team who are putting the application in to make sure that the nature of it is improving what's there in terms of the Alexandra, because if you look at the opening up of the area to the side of it, you can see on the screen at the moment, there's opening up of areas along the side, which is removing the 80s addition where the food hall on the side was put on, so reducing the size of that to open up more of the context of the building, and also looking at the walkway that would be between the edge. So there has been a significant amount of input, and I would suggest that those conversations have been very robust because it's a council application, not the other way round, which was suggested, which is it's a council application, therefore you don't concentrate. Actually, officers offer more diligence because of the concerns of comments like Councillor Hocking that there would be less. So if anything, they go 101% into making sure that that is something that's appropriate or mindful. So there has been some very robust conversations. In terms of finances, I'll let Martin answer.
Yeah, just to come back on Councillor McGregor's observations around borrowing and what might happen in the budget today. If you approve the extra spend today, there's some milestones before we get to construction. So, we've got to go out to tender first, and if the tender costs are too high, well, then we'll come back to members anyway. So we're some way off before we get to that point. We'll also be spending the government money first before we borrow. So that's point number 2. And currently we don't borrow any money at all. So we're in a better position than most authorities in terms of where we might be limited to, if you like, in the future. I don't know whether that will be sort of forced upon us. At the moment we operate via a prudential code, and the prudential code allows us as a council and you as members to set that, and that happens every year in the budget process. So that's as I see it, how it will proceed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Connett.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, this item is for note, but I don't think anyone's formally moved that. But the conversation has been wide-ranging, and not to preclude conversation on item 5, but the purposes of having a motion, I formally move the recommendation on agenda item 4 that we note the content of the report, and I also formally move the recommendation at 5 that the Council resolves to approve the additional capital budget of up to 600,000 in relation to the cinema construction and fit-out costs, in order for there to be a formal recommendation for the meeting to consider. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. Well, we'll do that in item 5, the second bit that you've referred to.
We've just moved it.
So you've morphed this one into item 5 as well with the recommendation. We've got to have a debate on item 5, haven't we?
Chairman, I wasn't saying there wouldn't be debate. I was formally moving the recommendation,
Okay,
so it's on the table.
I accept that. Okay. Is Councillor Malone, I'm allowing you to come back. Councillor McGregor came back. So if you can keep it brief, we'll move on to the next item where we've had it after the vote to note this.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be as brief as I can. Just to clear up a couple of things. In reply to Councillor Patch's question, the officer said that they had two options, the ESS or the big picture company. They're both the same thing. They're both spare room operations run by the gentleman in attendance here. The only difference is that one of them's been struck off. So you can't go to the big picture company. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't exist anymore. But hey, get consultation from a struck off company, why not? Consult some tea leaves while you're at it. A lot of people here sound like they know what they're talking about, but if you dig into their arguments for 5 seconds, they collapse. They just completely collapse. There isn't a business case. I'd also a little bit confused by what Councillor Dewhurst said, because he seemed to suggest that Scots are getting cold feet about this. And I'd like to know, because he seemed to say, well, if Scots don't want to take up this offer, then there are others. Well, who? View Cinemas, who've issued multiple profit warnings. Cineworld, whose share price is now worthless. And I'll come back to Mr. Arthur's Twitter account, because his tweets are very interesting. They present a far less rosy picture of cinema than he's presenting to us today, I can tell you. And I would urge you to go and have a look at his Twitter account. I mean, he says admissions worldwide were down 65% in 2019, and he's told us today that that year box office was less than the cinema's debts. In fact, worldwide, cinemas incurred debts of $26.9 billion US. Year on year, 5% of cinemas close. 5% of them close year on year. And he makes very, very clear, because he prints a graph of the two publicly traded cinema companies in this country, Cineworld versus Everyman, and points out the difference between them. Cineworld is bankrupt, pretty much, whereas Everyman is still going. And that's what he means. That's what he means when he says it could work if it is an audience-focused, community-centered venue. Because he means that's the exact same phrase he uses to describe Everyman cinemas. Now, these are cinemas that have parties, events, hen nights, Rocky Horror Picture Shows, that sort of thing. They have a very loyal following. They chase every pound, and they're in the middle of the community, and they're small, and they're in city centres. And it is a completely different business model to the one that we're being asked to approve, which is Scott Cinemas, which is a passive, big-ticket Hollywood cinema industry. And if you look at Mr. Arthur's Twitter, he says over and over again that this business is pretty much defunct, by his own words. And he has a colleague, I think, from Curzon Cinemas, Philip Mordecai, and he says the bricks and mortar model of traditional cinema is in for more pain and contraction in 2023. This is the Scott Cinema model. The people that are advising you to build it have said that it's finished. He doesn't identify a single part in the world where cinema is doing well. So why the hell is it going to do well in Newton Abbot, in a small market town, in the middle of the worst recession we've ever faced? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we need a break very shortly. I'd like to we've had a motion to move the report. This will all come out in the next item, item 5, we'll have it. So can I have a show of hands, I think purely that we just note this report, and this will go into debate in the next item, as I see it. Is that acceptable to you? Can I have a show of hands for the motion which was to note the report?
Point of order, Chair. I think Councillor Hocking, raise a motion that we should set aside the report.
It wasn't seconded, Chairman. We just voted.
You've got plenty of opportunity in the next item to roll fit up. What? It's a bit late. It's a bit late now. There's nothing contentious in noting the actual report, is there? And it goes into debate in the next item. So those that are against noting the report should please show. We've noted the report. Let's have an adjournment, a comfort break now for 10 minutes.
Chair, can we just do?
Sorry?
Can we just vote to note the report? Because
Can we vote to note the report? I'm being told.
Then against.
Against?
And no abstentions.
Any abstentions?
Okay. It's carried.
Right, it's carried then to note the report. Right, let's have a break for 10 minutes and then we'll come back and get on with the meeting. Item 5. Yep. We move to item 5 now in the agenda. And we've had a proposal and a seconder for the recommendation, which is to approve the additional capital budget of up to 600,000 in relation to the cinema construction and fit-out costs. And that was proposed by Alan Connett and seconded by Councillor Alistair Dewhurst. So it's now open to debate. Now, I hope members debated most of it in part 1. Obviously, there'll be plenty more to be said, I suspect, but I don't want people going over stuff, please, that you've already said in the previous item. But yes, Councillor Patch, you're first to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on process for this. We've got item 5, which we're on now, item 7, which will be in part 2, and then item 9, which all seem to be interrelated and the same issue, essentially. When will we be making the substantive vote on this? Will it be under item 9, as I understand it?
No, item 5 is a standalone item, as I see it, and we've had it proposed and seconded that this be done. So it's now open to debate. We probably won't need to go into part 2 here because I think that won't occur. Obviously, if there's a feeling that you want to take the debate into part 2, then I can do so if the members request me to do so.
Okay, so the substantive decision on the funding will be made before we get to item 9. I'm not sure what is the point of item 9 in that case.
Well, would you like to answer that in perhaps a more professional way than I am? It's going through the business case, etc., isn't it? So.
I would think the business case must be discussed before we make the decision on it.
The Managing Director wants to speak on this. Obviously, the agenda's been laid out the way it is, so.
It's with you, really, Chairman, in the sense that if you want to move to part 2, if members want to discuss the papers in pages 123 to 132, that's what we were suggesting were the commercially sensitive papers. Then we can do that and then come back. It's a matter for you as a committee whether you want to move into part 2 or whether you deal with it. When we put the agenda together, we did consider whether we needed or whether it was relevant to go into part 2, and there was a question about we might not need to go into part 2 depending on how the meeting was and what you wanted from that. So it's a decision really for members and to determine whether they want to move.
With respect, Chair, that's not the question I asked. I'm asking what's the point of having item 9 discussing the revised business case for the Future High Street Fund project after we've made the substantive decision on the extra funding?
Neil Blaney's put his hand up at the back, so I think we ought to hear from Neil.
Thank you, Chair. The running order of the agenda today follows the decisions from the notice of motion and then the deferred decision in September on the additional funding. So the notice of motion relates to item 9, which was the revised proposals relating to the Market Hall and the Alexandra Cinema, and then any other changes to the plan. Item 5 is about the £600,000 additional budget for the cinema element of the project. So what we've done is we've set out the agenda to have the audit and the cinema review that was asked from the 6th of September. We've then come back to that decision. Subject to members agreeing that, we've then got to go back to government with the revised business case, which shows the revised plans for the Alex and the Market Hall. But what we're saying is if the 600k isn't signed off, that part of the scheme doesn't happen and it changes the business case anyway. So there's a chronology of the decisions that need to be made. And if you make the decision to agree or not the revised business case, the 600k. If it's not accepted, falls off. So it's the first one is about the additional budget for the cinema, and then it's the final business case that we would resubmit to government to look at the revised to the plans and ask for an extension of time.
Right, there's hands going up at the back again. Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chair. It still seems to me we're putting the cart before the horse here. Hello. Let's go on a bit quiet here. I still don't see how we can make a decision on the extra funding without having discussed the business case, revised business case. There's a danger, surely, that if we don't discuss the business case, this council will make a decision and then discuss a way of justifying that and rewriting the business case to account for the decision. I think as long as we are able to discuss all germane facts before making the decision, that's my main concern, really. So I would hope that we can discuss the business case before making any decision on the extra funding.
Well, you've heard what the officers have had to say. I'm content to let the as I'm in the chair, let the decision continue here. We're on item 6, and we've had a proposal, item 5, and we've had a proposal and a seconder for the case, all right, to spend this money. So I'm continuing with that, I'm afraid. Now, do members want to move this into part 2 or not? There's no desire to move it into part 2. Right, so I'll take general debate on this item. I've got Councillor Dawes first. Sorry?
I don't mind it being in part 2 or speaking now, but is it being recorded publicly?
This is
yes,
live
it's been
streaming
live
now.
streamed, yeah.
Yes. Councillor Dawes, you're first to speak.
Thank you. My microphone's now on. So yes, taking on board your decision to continue with the debate, I'll now focus on the question at hand. I noted from my questions to the consultancy that they did include the theatre hire fee in Scott's Cinemas income, and they also said that they'd added 10,000 people to the Scott's own plan for the larger cinema to make it viable. To be a consultant, to be able to add 10,000 customers at a stroke of a button. So that brings us to the 150,000 customers and the £42 million multiplier for the town. Just to give us some context on that, Austin's turnover, published turnover, is £6 million per year. So we're talking about the impact of having 7 Austin's department stores put onto the town by having a cinema that could, in today's terms, sell out the Alex at its current capacity twice a day, every day, 365 days of the year. I just think that's unrealistic. Like Councillor Malone, but using different routes, I also thought that originally we were going to get one of the big 4 accountancy firms to look at this, to give their unbridled conservative with a small c view on the viability of this, but also to put their PI, their professional indemnity and their reputations behind this. When I asked a top industry insider who the best people to consult on this would be and why the council hadn't, in their opinion, appointed one of the big 4, they said the accountancy firms are too busy in this sector with total distress and decimation of the industry. The other point I asked my industry insider was to form an opinion on the consultants who were appointed. They said they didn't know them, but they knew of a company called the Big Picture Company, who have a playbook that is flaky but very good at going around and squeezing money out of councils. Then when they looked at the personnel on Companies House, they realised there was a crossover between the Big Picture Company and our current consultants. So red flag and alarm bells ringing there for me. there are things in the report that I and other people in the town would agree with, and other people in the creative sector would agree with. The town does need the cinema. That site in itself is not an unreasonable site for a cinema. In fact, very convenient, right next to the Alex, a Grade 2 listed theatre. What's wrong with the current plan is the scale of it. The ambition is totally unrealistic in the current market. The report writers are correct in saying that you need someone like the Everyman. Scots are a good operator, but they've put down what they said is viable, and they had to have their figures massaged for it to work. What you need is a community-led cultural offer within the city, and yes, Everyman would be great. Scots can do what they can do, and I think what is likely to happen is that we will end up with a community-led sort of initiative within this sector, because the other thing that's included in the report, which I hope everyone's read in detail, is the project plan, which demonstrates that all of the money from the Future High Street funds needs to have been spent by March 2024. So there is no scope for delay. This project has to start tomorrow. Planning has to be passed without delay. There has to be no challenges. There has to be no inflation. There has to be no contractors' procurement problems. Here's an example of the council's ability to deal with change and ability to manage large-scale building projects. We've been sat in this temporary council chamber for I don't know how many months. We don't have a council chamber due to unforeseen circumstances. So I suggest that the Future High Street Fund, whatever is debated today, is doomed. The lack of engagement with the community groups being the biggest failing there. What is put forward in the plan is not achievable. And what the residents of Teignbridge need at this point in time is some realism and not for people to be playing fast and loose with their money. My question to people in this chamber is, if this was your money, if this was your pension, your £600,000 or £100,000 pension, £200,000 pension, would you be putting this money, your own money, into this? I certainly wouldn't be doing, and I wouldn't like to do it on behalf of the residents of Teignbridge either. I think we will be able to drag something out of this, but unfortunately the competency of the project to date has been failing, and I urge members not to take a reckless decision to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Rawlston.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of things. I'm trying to keep an open mind as much as I can, but in general, I think we've had some good quality information and a good quality audit report on the process. And I think some of the arguments against now and the attempt to undermine the quality of the information is a bit worrying. For example, we hear the 400 seats a day, that's twice the Alex Theatre as it currently is, to be filled every day, and that sounds not credible. But what we're not being told is, of course, it's got 4 screens. So that 400 a day becomes 100 in each screen. And if it's 4 showings a day, that's 25 seats in a screen. That feels very credible information. And I think it's all about how you present this. And when we say we haven't had engagement and all the other things, the independent auditors have actually said, yes, we have, and the officers have done a great job. So I just want to put some balance into this when we look at the information that's being challenged, and especially at the way it's being challenged at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
It's Councillor Connett next. Councillor McGregor after. Okay. Can you catch the eyes for me?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll stick with most of my points into this section rather than in section 4. I found it very interesting that the council's gone out after the adjournment of the last meeting, the amendment that was carried, and commission reports from Devon Audit Partnership and then from ESS. And that's enabled people who take issue with the ESS report to look at the consultant and their bona fides and say what they say. But council is invited to accept a top industry insider without knowing who that is or what their bona fides are, for us to check who they are and what they know and what their credentials are in terms of evaluating that. But we're invited to accept that Councillor Dawes has spoken to a top industry insider, and we should accept that with the same weight as the consultant who stood at the back of the room and talked about his industry experience and what he's done. This is, though, a decision right now in terms of the up to £600,000 additional investment in a cinema. I think there are two divergent views in this room. There are those people who have a view about Newton Abbot as a market town, which is fine as it is and needs little change, if any change at all. And there's a view, a different view, a view that I share, which is Newton Abbot has underplayed its place in Devon, if not the region, but certainly Devon, for too long. And we have an opportunity here to invest not only our own money, but the government's money through 9 million. And before anyone says it, I do appreciate governments don't have money of their own. It's taxpayers' money. And I accept what Councillor Dawes says, that this is public money, whether it's coming from Teignbridge or from government. But the important thing about that is your vision for Newton Abbot and who it's serving. Is it just for people who live in Newton Abbot to go to the cinema? Or is it conceivable that people in Bovey Tracy might like an evening out, and instead of going to Exeter, they go to Newton Abbot? That people in Star Cross, who are also on the train station, might come to Newton Abbot rather than going into Exeter. That people further up in the north of Teignbridge might actually drive down to Newton Abbot and enjoy a really good night out in the town and that boost our economy. And reference was made to car parking. So let me be clear. In the forthcoming council budget, we have no intention, no plans, no desire, and will not be suggesting to council charging after 6 p.m. And in fact, I'll even go further. I would be happy to include in the budget proposals that this council makes a commitment not to do that for the next 4 years, because it's the nighttime economy that we particularly want to boost. It's all about getting more footfall in, and it strikes me that the point made by Councillor Hocking is actually a valid point. But actually, if we're a council that is saying we want to boost the nighttime economy, I'm grateful to him for the idea that we might charge after 6, but it's not one that we had entertained or thought of, and I don't think we should do that. In terms of the multi-storey car park, if there's extra capacity needed, then the council at that time can choose to open up the car park if it needs to. But the important thing is also that we're not making a decision today because the cinema is going to open tomorrow. We're making a decision today on whether to invest up to £600,000, subject to having a signed-up cinema operator with us, whether that's WTW Scots or another, and the consultant set out the type of regional operator that might be interested in coming to Newton Abbot. So there are safety catches within the decision up to 600,000, which, as Chief Finance Officer's indicated, is to be paid back. No spending without a signed-up cinema operator with us. And then we are talking about a 2.5, 3 year period of time. So I quite understand the anxieties right now about the recession that the country is facing and the difficult climate. But some people would say that now is the time to invest, so you're there to ride the wave when the economy recovers. There are some people who would say, well, will it ever? But it has in the past, and I'm convinced that the UK and Newton Abbot will see better times. But Newton Abbot is not going to see better times if its own council won't invest. And for many, many years, local government, not just Teignbridge, but many councils, have been the people who invested when the private sector wouldn't. It's the local government, the municipal sector, which has taken the risk of investing in order to make things happen, to protect jobs, which is one of the things that we want to do, protect and retain jobs, to boost our economy, to support our businesses, to get more independent retailers into Newton Abbot and support our town. These are fine ambitions which are sometimes lost in the conversation simply about the cinema, Chairman. My view, my vision, is a vision for Newton Abbot and for Teignbridge. That's why I'm going to support it as a councillor for Kenton with Star Cross. It's because I think this is the right thing to do for the district, which supports people in their everyday lives by giving an opportunity for young people to come into town, have somewhere to go, people who may want to go out for a meal before or after and see a cinema. And I think Councillor Rollison neatly unpicked the challenge that we were being given about whether this was a full theatre, a full cinema twice a day, every day, to actually breaking it down into what it means in a four-screen cinema. So, Chairman, I happily moved the recommendation on this agenda because I think it's the right thing to do. It's not without its risks, but whatever else is in life, walking across the road has a risk. For this council, with the 9 million of government funding into the Future High Street Fund, we have an opportunity for Newton Abbot, but let's not lose sight also that if we don't do the cinema, if the vote fails today and we don't do the cinema, then there may be no change at the Alex. The opportunity for a cultural and arts centre goes because the cinema stays there. We don't know what W.T. Scott's might want to do in time. Those things are uncertain. So what we throw Newton Abbot back into a recession at a point when we are trying to pull it forward to make it some place where people will want to come and make some positive choices about. I think that's a goal and ambition which is worthy of this council, and I would ask councillors to support it, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor next, and Phil, after Patch.
Thank you, Chair. When I put my hand up earlier, it was actually just to amend the motion slightly to call it an in-principle acceptance of the up to £600,000 additional cost. However, having listened to Councillor Connett making his impassioned plea for the expenditure in Newton Abbot, there are one or two elements that kind of sort of leap out in terms of the longer term view for Newton Abbot. Once a long time ago, I was executive member for Sport, Leisure and Recreation, and during that time we were talking about the fact that Newton Abbot needed additional leisure facilities, that the swimming pool was inadequate for the demand that was already in place, that we were sharing facilities with the school, and that we would be looking at a replacement leisure centre. So where's that going to go within the Newton Abbot development if we are saying that we're going to commit to retaining the 1,000 car parking spaces that we've currently got? Because that new leisure centre is going to take up a fair amount of space, whichever way you look at it. But in principle, I think what we should be doing is we should be saying that if the business case review that we're about to take in the part 2 is to be discussed in full and debated in full, then I think in principle we can move to approve. So I would back that motion at the moment on an in principle basis. Thank you.
It's Councillor Patch and then it's Councillor Bullivan.
Thank you. I found it interesting that the leader, when attempting to broaden the appeal of a new large cinema, chose to first mention Bovey Tracy as a sort of community for pulling in people to the cinema in Newton Abbot. Perhaps he's unaware the people of Bovey Tracy have for some time been pulling together a community-funded initiative of a local cinema in Bovey Tracy, which operates not just as a cinema, incidentally, but also as an art gallery. We'll have a cafe in there. The people of Bovey Tracy can be well served. I'll speak also from my experience of arranging for several years now a community cinema in Liverton Village Hall. We put on films that we think will appeal to local people, and we do get a few people. The numbers vary month on month, who come along and to watch the sort of carefully chosen films we put on. We've never made a surplus. We can't make a profit. We're a charity. We've never broke even. I don't think we've ever come close to breaking even. That's fine. We're a charity. We're charged with putting on provisions for the community. I think if people, certainly in my area, want to go and see a film at a cinema rather than sit at home and watch it streamed, they've got options available. I don't think, I mean, perhaps one of the members here that represents Bovey Tracy can tell us about the plans and vision of the Bovey Tracy community for that cinema and how that's going. If it fails, the sort of the project in Bovey Tracy, then that sends a signal. Larger, grander scale projects won't succeed. If it succeeds, that will be at the expense of what is proposed for a centralised cinema. I have a fear here that this is doomed to failure, regardless of whether we vote to commit 600,000. I think the economic circumstances, the lack of a vision in terms of pitching what might work, and I know this is a view that is shared by others in this room. I'm not sure this will actually happen. It will not happen as a project. I think the travesty of this is that for a couple of years, there have been a small number of members with industry experience who have been putting forward the view that this whole project should have been reconsidered to something more modest, more tied into the community, that might have allowed us to take this huge tranche of the money to benefit Newton Abbot and indeed the local surrounding areas. It's on record over the last 2 years, the votes where people have voted against the suggestions that we have been making in order to, in effect, push it into long grass to bring us to a stage now where the time has run out, the clock stopped ticking. I personally think there's very little chance, even if we vote through the money now, that this will be provided and indeed be, or if it's provided, will be viable in 6, 8, 10 years' time. And a lot of council taxpayers' money would have been put towards it. Perhaps I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope if it's voted through, it succeeds. I think we're discussing the wrong issue today. I think what we should be discussing is, can anything be salvaged from this car crash of a project? There's a lot of money that was an offer for Newton Abbot. If the leadership of this council had listened to local people in the community, to members of this council with industry experience, people with creative ideas, then we might be discussing a totally different project now, or it would have been given a green light by now. As I said, this is all on the record. When it comes to be told, people will be accountable, not just the leadership who refuse to listen to the people of Newton Abbot and the independent-minded members of this council, but I think the record will show, because of much of the voting, we managed to get recorded votes. The recording will show how the party members, the Liberal, Democrat and Conservative, or the Condemned Alliance, as I like to call them, how they supinely just voted along with what was put in front of them and did not question what was going on here. It's a real shame that it's the independent members of this council that have tried to get this on track. And I'm just, yeah, well, I think I've made my views on this matter. I'm not going to vote for it, I don't think. I think it would take a lot to persuade me that we should throw good money after bad.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Bullivan.
Thank you. First of all, can I just say the comments made by Councillor Connett I totally endorse, and I think his view of this application is the right one. I am concerned that since 2019 or 2018, when the first proposals came forward for the Future High Street Fund, they were based on the fact that it was recognised across the country high streets in small towns were declining and town centres were suffering because of it. And the policy that came forward was town centres needed a vision, an idea of how they could invest to promote those town centres, to bring life back into the town centres. And the Future High Street Fund and the funding that was allocated to Newton Abbot came forward because a vision of what could be happening could be delivered in requirements to make the footfall, increase visitors to town, bring life back into the centre of Newton Abbot. Now, as a Newton Abbot resident, and a very proud Newton Abbot resident, I recognise the fact that our town needs investment. The funds that are coming forward are essential to the future well-being of our town. The proposals to put a cinema are the only proposals that have been seriously put on the table. For 2 years, we've heard from the Friends of the Alex and other people who've got a legitimate interest in bringing other activities into the town to create a cultural centre, but we're still waiting 2 years down the line for proposals from them how the old Alex cinema building can be used and converted. As far as I'm aware, I haven't seen any financial proposals or ideas that have come forward for anybody to consider. We need to take a forward view. We need to promote Newton Abbot. We need to recognise that the town needs investment. This is a vehicle for us to be able to do that. In making this decision, and I'd remind people, it's money to be invested, to be repaid over a period of lease. It's not a grant. I think this is essential for the future well-being of Newton Abbot, and particularly the two most deprived areas, or two of the most deprived areas in the whole of Devon, which are on the doorsteps of this cinema. It'll bring employment and jobs and opportunities for those people that are currently at the bottom end of the social spectrum. And we need that. I ask councillors to recognise, for the benefit of Newton Abbot, this is a good investment, it's a good idea for the town, and I ask you to support the idea that we can do it. We'll be coming on to how we can support the idea of the creation of the Arts Centre within the Alex building, and again, that's something that's a good idea, but we need to look at it in, I think, section 9 of this meeting. So please, I ask you to, on behalf of the people of Newton Abbot, please support the town getting an up-to-date modern facility that'll bring people to our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bullivan. It's now Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chair. As a member for Dawlish, I don't think it's really my place to say, no, Newton Abbot can't have this money for a new cinema. Similarly, I'm surprised that Councillor Patch is proposing that he couldn't support this because, not similarly, taking the completely different view to Councillor Patch, who is saying that, that because Bovey Tracy has its own facilities and because Ilsington also has them, then that he couldn't support this cinema. This cinema is of the type of cinema that reaches out beyond Newton Abbot. It attracts people from far and wide. Dawlish has its own small theatre with cinema. It's a very nice provision to have, but if I want to go and see Top Gun or the latest Bond film, I wouldn't want to go and see it at the Shaftesbury for all its quaint charm. One of the main reasons is the seats aren't very comfortable. And that's something that Scott Cinemas has been careful to do in its own offer. It has some of the most comfortable seats in the district and attracts other members from Dawlish, and I know from Teignmouth too, where there has been mention about the seats also in the pavilions, but comparisons are odious. I certainly will be supporting this extra 600,000, whether it's for Scott Cinemas, who currently are probably looking and counting the beans to make sure, to see whether they can afford to move ahead with us, or to another provider who's probably looking at this extra 600,000 thinking, actually, that'd be very nice, you know, we could really make a go of this in Newton Abbot, and perhaps bring those other event type of displays that would also boost footfall in the town centre. So I would certainly be supporting this, and I hope that other members will do also. Thank you.
Point of a reply, Chair, I've been misrepresented.
Do you want to speak to tell us why you've been misrepresented? Well, carry on.
Yes, Chair. I'd like to point a reply in that I've been misrepresented by Councillor Taylor in his last response. I did not say that I would be minded to vote against this proposal for the extra money because Bovey Tracy and other places have facilities. And by the way, I mentioned Liverton Village Hall, not Ilsington. I suggested I would be minded to vote against it because I don't think it's viable. I think there's a real overwhelming danger that it will not be working, that money that council taxpayers have
Yeah,
put
you
towards
said that
this.
already.
Yeah, I have, yes. So,
Well,
but
let's
to put
move-
that's what I said, not
yeah,
the
I've given you the
misrepresented
chance
view.
to correct it.
Thank
No,
you.
thank you very much. Right, it's Councillor Malone next to you now.
Thank you. Yeah, there's an awful lot of straw man arguments being put forward here. Councillor Patch didn't say that because Bovey Tracy's got a cinema, Newton Abbot shouldn't have one. Nobody said, to contradict Councillor Dewhurst, that some people think Newton Abbot doesn't need investment. Nobody has said that. And to contradict Councillor Connett, nobody has said that some people think Newton Abbot should just chug along as it is. Nobody is saying that. Can people please stop reconstructing our arguments to mean that we want to live in the past, in the dark ages, and we want Newton Abbot to stay the same and preserved in aspect? Nobody has said that once, okay? All we've said all along is not this. Not this, we've said, and we've been ignored all along. So now we're here, still saying, not this. And like Councillor Dawes, I honestly thought in good faith when I asked for that amendment that you were going to go to one of the big four consultancies and just look at cold, hard monetary facts, just financials. I didn't think you were going to go off to some cowboy outfit that's been established for 5 minutes. Because I tell you, when they mosey off into the sunset, there's going to be nothing left. There's going to be no accountability. They're just going to liquidate that company and start another one, like they have done 9 times already. This is not a consultation. You're pulling figures out the air. You're pulling people out the air. You're working to fantasies. You're like children. It's just insane what you're proposing. And you will be held accountable for this mess. Because I agree with Councillor Connett, actually. I think Newton Abbot isn't pulling its way in Devon. I think it should be doing a lot better. And the reason for that is because it's been done over by council after council with bad decisions. From Pen Inn and the roundabout and Sainsbury's to Asda and its 16 acres of car park. This town has been ruined by council after council sitting in this chamber making crap decisions. And this isn't an antidote to that. This is very much in that tradition. Ruining Newton Abbot with this monstrous lump of metal that does not fit in, that I haven't heard a single person outside this chamber say they like. I'll make a prediction, right? This either will never happen, or it will be closed down or repurposed within 5 years of opening. And I will give anyone who wants to bet with me evens on that, yeah? Can put your money where your mouth is. Let's have a bet on this. Put your own money into this. That thing is not going to last.
Well, I've let you have your say, Councillor Malone. You feel the way you do and you speak passionately and you've had your say. So I think Councillor Dewhurst would like to write a reply to that from what I can see. Councillor Dewhurst.
Thank you, Chair. To be quite honest, I think Councillor Malone should apologise to a guest who is here who doesn't have the same kind of right of reply as we councillors do. I think it's appalling behaviour.
Could you tell me what I said that was factually incorrect?
That I was a child. I'm only 60 years of age.
And that was what I said that was factually incorrect.
Okay. Come on, members, now. That's it. I'm giving everybody the right of speech and everything. So.
It looks like duck shit and it smells like duck shit.
No. Let's move on, please. It's Councillor Hocking now, I think, wants to have a say. Councillor Dawes has got his hand up, has he?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Oh, it's working today. Obviously you all know my feelings on this. I am dead against us spending another 600,000 on this building. This building is not wanted. Yes, a cinema is, and there's been no qualms about that. Even when you went back to 2018 when the High Street, and there's been many meetings over the past, many plans have come forward. The cinema has been put here, there and everywhere. And in between that, this council paid 13.2 million for Market Walk. In telling us then that they were going to get all the money back from that 13.2 million over a short period of time for the rents and whatever you, and then find themselves having to spend another 100,000 to buy the post office out, which, by the way, is still empty. We still have empty shops within Market Walk, which this council doesn't seem to want to rent out. I know when they bought the place, they bought the Market Walk, they said they wanted to keep high quality shops within the town centre. Well, that's not happened, has it? Because you still got empty shops there which are not being rented out. So this council is obviously losing money in that. You are now going to knock down 2 shops to put this new cinema in. One of them is New Look. Not sure where they're going to go. Are they going to stay in the town? It would be nice to know, because that is a well-used shop. Shoals, which was there, has been empty for goodness knows how long and has never been rented out, presumably for the same reason that the post office hasn't been rented out, that this council has other plans for it, and obviously Shoals, the other plans is the fact they're going to knock it down and put this building up. This building is too big. People do not want a whole huge building that holds 4 screens. It could be half the size and still have 4 screens. It could have 2 screens on the ground floor, 2 screens on the top floor. It could be cut down to 2 screens on the top floor and still have your retail underneath. But are we going to be in the same position as we have been for the last few years since Teignbridge bought Market Walk, and still have empty shops underneath there, still not being able to rent them out because we can't find the high quality shops that this council believes they should have in there? Or are we just going to put some more takeaways in there or whatever? Yes, we could do with more restaurants, but actually Newton Abbot has got quite a few very good restaurants, all privately owned, very good restaurants. I do not see, and I've lived in Newton Abbot since I was born, basically. Admittedly, for the first 20 years I lived in Kingstaton, but Newton Abbot has always been the town. Kingstaton has always been a village, and as far as I can see, still is. But that's another argument. The town itself is vibrant. Some people in this room are trying to paint the picture that it is not. The town is vibrant. We have one mainstay store of Austin's. Even the owner of Austin's doesn't believe that this is the right thing to do within Newton Abbot. Now, if he thought he was going to gain all this extra footfall, surely he would be supporting it. But no, he don't. He's against it. And why? Because he does not, as a businessman, he does not see it working. And I'm afraid that we could, if we're not very, very careful, we could put another 600,000, however you match it up, whether it's a loan or whether it'll come back in 30 years' time because we'll get it back through the rent, is immaterial. At this moment in time, we are going to commit ourselves to just under £4 million of borrowing to do what people in Newton Abbot do not want. Yes, they want a cinema. They don't want that, and they don't want it that size. Please, let's start being realistic. Either cut it down and make it look a bit better, but don't put a shipping container on top of 2 shops and put it next door to a Grade 2 listed building. Thank you.
Thank you. The officers are wanting to reply to this, so I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify the situation on Market Walk since we bought it. When we did the business case for Market Walk, we assumed a minimum return that we required from that investment. As I understand it, and we look at the budget every day, that return is still being made above that business case minimum. In addition to that, when we took it over, the number of units that were unlet at that point is more than what it is now. So we have let more units since we purchased that building. Thank you.
That's a creditable answer, isn't it? Thank you. Right, it's Councillor Dawes to speak, then Councillor Cox.
Hi, thanks for letting me come back. I've got 3 points I'd just like to come back on that have been mentioned. One was the suggestion that if this doesn't happen, that there's the likelihood of no change at the Alex, so Scott Cinemas continuing to operate there. We've been told multiple times that Scott Cinemas don't see the current operation as viable, so I'm not entirely sure which one it is. Are they going to stay there, or is it not viable? This is why we have to do this. The suggestion that a swathe of people in here, or a small number of people in here, want to keep Newton Abbot as it is very disingenuous. I mean, we spent half an hour debating whether I could even speak on this matter. I mean, have people not noticed that there are plans for the Alexandra Theatre that have been drawn up by a group of committed individuals? Have people not noticed that there are 43 members of a cultural group that has been set up in the absence of this council having a cultural strategy like any other grown-up council would have? I'm slightly disappointed in Councillor Bullivant suggesting that because there's no business plan for the Alexandra Theatre Community Benefit Society, therefore it's not viable. He knows it's been frozen out and disengaged by this council. He also knows that that Community Benefit Society has been successful in gaining Architectural Heritage Fund grants for development of the business plan. We have got we've got national support from the Architectural Heritage Fund to develop the plan. So please don't say that there's a lack of ambition and lack of engagement and no other solutions and suggestions. In terms of a reality check, let's just go back. Councillor Hocking brought forward the very good point that the owners of Austin's do not think this is viable. However, we're being told maybe that doesn't matter because we can create the scale of 7 more Austins. 7 more Austins in this town, the biggest department store, independent department store in a very long way, one of the very few that still exists. 7 more of those. So whilst the rest of the world is challenged and our government tell us it's global, this crisis, we're all up against it. The American interest rates are rising. Inflation is rampant everywhere. Whilst all that is happening, Newton Abbott's going to have boom time. I'm afraid this is just totally delusional. It's something that the residents of Teignbridge will be holding this council accountable for in time. I'm afraid to say I think a lot of this debate is purely political and presentational, because looking at the plan, there is no potential for this to be delivered. You have run out of road. The Architectural Heritage Fund told me themselves that many councils are running out of road on the Future High Street Fund. People cannot spend it in time. People cannot procure the builders, the consultants, get the planning permission through. So this whole thing's farcical, but more worryingly, it's sadly very delusional, and I'm afraid we've been misrepresented many times in the counter-arguments. Thank you.
Thank you. It's now Councillor Cox's turn to
Councillor Connett said that if we do not find a partner, a business partner, who are going to put down their own money, it won't go ahead. So it's a case of, if there is that safety catch that Scots or somebody else will come forward, and if they don't come forward, we'll do that. If we were just going to throw this money at it, I would be very concerned and probably vote no. But we have that safety catch that there needs to be a commercial partner. And without a commercial partner, it won't go ahead. So I think that's helpful. And I would love to see the Alexandra Theatre done. But I do think that Scots will stay put, because they can renew their lease under the law if we don't go ahead with this project. It may not... If a commercial partner is not prepared to put their money where their mouth is, then it won't go ahead. So we can be helpful. We can be assured in that respect that it's got to be commercially viable. And there are different things. There are films shown in the Riviera in Teignmouth, in the pavilions in Teignmouth. There's the Teignmouth Film Society, which plays films in Trinity School. It's horses for courses. My kids go to Paynton or Exeter because they want that experience, and they would probably come to this in Newton Abbot. I don't know if that makes enough people, but I think
That's a commercial decision for others, and they will either, if they are committed to it, they believe it's going to make money, they'll come and join Teignbridge. If not, we don't give them, the money won't be there.
Okay, it's Councillor Collett, so I'm allowing him to come back, obviously as leader. So, are there any other speakers after this? How many times have you spoken? Twice already on this item, Adrian?
Does the Constitution set out a maximum or minimum amount? Or there is some flexibility for the chair. It's a very small point I wanted to make in response to Councillor Cox.
Well, just make a small point now, if you want.
Thank you, Chair. My response to Councillor Cox was, okay, we've got a safety fallback position of if the money isn't put in by the private entity, then we don't commit to our money. But what a great fallback position. We can be reassured that we'll lose the the millions of pounds of the future High Street Fund if it doesn't go ahead. That's a wonderful fallback position, isn't it?
Well, you've had your chance to come back. 3 times now I've allowed you to speak. So, Councillor Connett.
Chairman, I just wanted to ask that I think it's been an extensive debate. The question was put.
Yes, I think it's time to go to the vote on this. The motion has been put before you. It's been proposed and seconded, and it's time to go to the debate, to the vote.
Yeah.
Can we have a vote, please?
Oh, yes,
We need
yes.
Sorry, 5 people.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
thank you. Thanks.
Yep.
Yep.
Trish will actually call the names. I think is she calling the names? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Austin. For. Councillor Bradford. Against. Councillor Bullivant.
For.
Councillor Colclough. For. Councillor Connett.
For.
Councillor David Cox. For. Councillor Hugh Cox.
For.
Councillor Dewhurst.
For.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
For.
Councillor Hocking.
Against.
Councillor Gordon Hook.
For.
Councillor Jackie Hook.
For.
Councillor Jeffries.
For.
Councillor Keeling.
For Newton Abbott.
Councillor McGregor.
Shh, quiet, please. Councillor McGregor.
Councillor McGregor. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Malone.
Against.
Councillor Parker. Councillor Patch.
Against.
Councillor John Petherick.
Against.
Councillor Linda Petherick. Councillor Phipps.
For.
Councillor Purser.
For.
Councillor Rollison.
For.
Councillor Russell.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Thorne.
For.
Councillor Toome. Sorry, he's gone. Yeah. Councillor Wrigley.
For.
Apologies, Councillor Dorr. So I missed you. I missed your.
Against.
Councillor Nuttall.
For.
And yourself, Chair.
For.
It's carried. It's carried.
Yeah, I think we'd like to hear the numbers, please,
Okay,
if we
I'll
may. I had it at 6 against with 1 abstention. I haven't counted the strokes I've got here, but I can do. 24?
24.
Yeah, I had it. Did you have it at 24?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, it did. Well, the record's there of who voted for what. So it was 24 for, 6 against, wasn't it? And 1 abstention.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I do
Yes,
as well.
Chair.
You both did?
Yeah.
Right. So that concludes that item now. Thank you. No.
Agenda item 9.
Yes, we go to agenda item 9 now. The Executive Member for Economy and Jobs to move the recommendation is in my brief on this one. It's the Future High Street Fund project, the revised business case. So can we have that item on start there? Thank you.
Chair. It is on. Thank you. I'd like to formally move the item 9 with recommendation 3 to change, which would be to lift the revocation and keep the existing reporting requirement in place, Chair. So I formally move that. Thank you.
Seconder from lights right in the way of my glasses. It's Richard Keeling, isn't it? Yes. Councillor Keeling, yeah. I can see you, the light's right behind you. Right, so there's a proposer and a seconder, so I throw this open to debate. Councillor Connett.
Chairman, I just want to address myself to item 3 at the last council meeting, which was adjourned. The amendment approved by council was to ask that the executive receives a monthly update, which supported all councillors keeping a track on the Future High Street Fund. The recommendation here to council to revoke requirement is from officers who identify the workload that was placed on them on monthly reporting. However, mindful of all that is said, whether you are for the 600,000 or against or whatever, I think all of us would feel that certainly for the next 6-7 months, it would be really helpful for councillors to have that regular update, which a place that can readily be found. And so, Chairman, that's why Councillor Jeffreys has moved in recommendations on page 133, moved items 1 and 2 and the deletion of 3, because we want to maintain that monthly reporting, Chairman, and that is to which Councillor Keeling seconded, and I support 1 and 2, and I support the deletion of recommendation 3, Chairman.
Duly noted, thank you. Anybody? Councillor Hook, Jackie Hook.
Thank you. On item 1, the revised project scope and referring to the appendices, I'm just seeking clarification for those of us that are planning committee members. I mean, I've always been very clear and stated before that the planning decisions on the 2 applications, one for the cinema and one ultimately for the market hall, are completely separate decisions, and that we can comfortably make the decision we've just made about supporting the 600k or otherwise. But I noticed that appendices, some of the appendices have sketches of the market hall, what it might look like, and also street scenes of the cinema and an internal layout of the cinema. So can you just reassure us that by voting to approve that project scope with those appendices, we are not predetermining ourselves? Thank you.
Yeah, I think down the end of the table here.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We were comfortable that you wouldn't be predetermining yourselves based on that, because this is about the business case and not about the design, and you may have a completely different view when you get to a planning committee around the design elements of it. I think this is the in principle around the business case, not around the design of the cinema.
Chairman, can I just ask, sorry, can I just ask that is explicitly minuted? Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask that question from Councillor Jackie Hook and the reply from the Managing Director is explicitly minuted, so everyone is clear about that sometime later on, that this issue of predetermination doesn't exist for any councillor. Thank you.
Well, I think Sarah is assuring us of that. She's writing away. So have you got that, Sarah? That will be minuted for you. So is there anybody, Councillor Bullivan, you'd like to say something?
Just a point of clarity. The item 3 on the agenda about the reporting from the officers. I recognise the workload that the officers are under. Would you like to change the format of your reporting to reduce the workload, or would it be appropriate to reduce the format?
Thank you. I might ask Neil to comment. Our basis of reporting was using the information that the project team use basically on risk, cost, and the project plan. We were hoping to simplify it as best we can. We keep the portfolio holder updated with those basic details. I'd have to ask the officer directly. Neil?
Thank you, Chair. And for Councillor Bullivant, it's the monthly cycle for committee reports requires obviously the preparation of the reports, the consultation internally to make sure you've got all the relevant information available to you. And the request was looking at members are about to sign off a timeline and a budget and a programme, and that we'd report back if, by exception, you know, they weren't being kept to track. So it's there's a lot of work involved in creating it. There's times where, and in this instance, it will happen in the next few months, there won't be any progress. So we can obviously be a very simplified report, but it's understanding, I guess, the depth of information that's required beyond what's already been approved. If members agree to sign this off today, that you require updates on. And I guess the question is, what information is the most pertinent to know, and is that something that members want to see more frequently in members' newsletters, for example, or is it, you know, I guess it's clarity on what that isn't already signed off that you're looking for. If everything's on track, then there's not really much to update beyond what you've already got in front of you.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the workload that officers are under, and I think they've done a fantastic job. That was really well endorsed by the audit report, which one of the strengths of the success of the officers was the reporting and accountability. And I think there is a recommendation in the audit report that the extra financial detail is in the spreadsheet. I think it's in 2.31, suggests monthly reporting continue, and that was accepted or was implemented, I believe. So we should have reporting and risk management in every sense of risk that we face, because it's absolutely vital part of project management. It's like saying we're not going to do the accounts at the end of the year or something like that. It's a welcome thing. It spots troubles early on. So it shouldn't be a worry. It should be an actual help and benefit if you can spot an issue early on or spot an opportunity early on. So I really feel we should stick with the audit report and the excellent job that's been done and not change anything. And I support the motion.
So can we go to the vote, please, on 1 and 2, as on page 133, that's been proposed and seconded. Can we go to the vote, please? In favour, yeah. I don't know whether you wanted it to be a name vote or something. So anybody want to stand, or are you happy to go with it straight for your hands? Right, it's hands. Try and count them.
I think that's 26.
26. Those against? Those abstaining?
Four. Yeah, right.
4. Well, that brings us to the end, doesn't it, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you very much, everybody. We've managed to get through it by 1:10, so we can go and have some lunch now and go home, as they say. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending.